Hello, good tidings and good evenings, friends. Chat, you guys were killing it in that Words on Stream. You managed to get to level, what, 16, 17? And that got my starting screen lasted for 20 minutes. Insane. You guys are killing it. Yes, that's such a pretty model. Yes, this is my whatever. My V friend who was maybe fated to be a V sibling, but we'll see. Who knows? Maybe not. Maybe. This is Celine.
Sibling in the
Make sure. Why don't you introduce yourself? Yes.
Hi everybody, my name is Celine Dreamer. I am your Monster Girl VTuber. I hardly stream right now because of life stuff, but Gray has been gracious enough to tick me up on this little brain idea that I had. So thank you for being supportive and helping me to do some stuff.
Absolutely. I always love catching up with you. We met each other, probably like a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy? Time flies.
It's been so long.
It's been so long. Our ancient bodies cracked together. Yeah. But we have enjoyed each other's company for the whole time, and we are both nerds, both avid nerds. The head dwarf, what a legend. Welcome to, oh my God, for 18 months.
Yo, that's a long time.
Also, thank you for the raid, by the way. That's crazy. That is a year and a half. That is wild. Yeah, so we don't have anything set in stone at the moment. We are planning to make this like quasi-regular, definitely not weekly, because who has time for that? But maybe every handful of weeks or once a month. Sub baby's 9 months old. Let's go. And we're going to talk about just tabletop things, RPGs, maybe tabletop war games. I hear that Celine has gotten interested/invested in Warhammer 40K.
I fell down the rabbit hole very violently. I hit everything on the way down. So I'm going to need some help, though, because I'm super green. I have no idea what's going on. So
she's super green. Suki, what the fuck? $50 right at the beginning of stream. Dude, you're going crazy. Thank you so much. That is wild. I don't know how to respond to that, but thank you so much. I hope you're enjoying your stay here and enjoying your time in our community. Now poof into the background. It's just like a dropping a smoke bomb and like whoop 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 whoop. You're like, wait. I have this. You're like poof. Whoop 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 whoop. Best I can do. Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And yeah, hydrate, make me take care of my body. This old creepy crustacean of a body. Yeah. I have turned off a couple redeems because Celine is recording this. So she's gonna have it edited down a little bit and cut some of the bullshit chatter. So I have turned off ones that will be disruptive to her recording. So unfortunately, no jars or gremlins for this stream. Everything else is pretty much fair game, although I will warn you, any of the Hex ones, Hex is not here because she looks terrible on green screen, so it is what it is. Wait, no, because you're not green screening, right? You're recording with a background now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we could technically whip her out.
Hex is back on the table, baby.
Yeah.
There we go.
Wait, where'd she go?
No. Listen, I have 2 hex toggles because I do be that way. Your chat Pokemon is Mawile? Oh, I love Mawile. Mawile is such a fantastic, crazy thing. Imagine tagging your co-streamer in your thing. Follow my friend at, now on here, is it Celine Dreamer? It is. Nailed it. Imagine. Couldn't be me, professional. Thank you for the reminder. I didn't even know.
I was like, what is my ad? I don't know. I stream so little right now, guys. I apologize. But I'm trying to do some things and make it a little bit less, infrequent.
Yes, truly a legend. So, with that out of the way, you want to start with just start talking about actual on-topic stuff?
Yeah.
Why don't you take the lead? This is your idea. This is your fault.
It's my baba. So I don't know if y'all can tell, but oh, thank you for the follow. I didn't turn off my stuff so they could. Oh no, it's okay. We'll roll with it.
We'll figure it out. Listen, episode 1 is full of scuff.
Yes, as it should be. So my character is heavily inspired by creatures of the deep and the eldritchnesses and stuff like that. So I'm super into D&D, and I know that Gray is too, and he's also into a lot of other tabletops, so I want to learn from him. And so I was wondering if he would be cool to, you know, kind of chit chat and just discuss certain things about tabletop RPGs, how they've progressed, because it's changed quite a lot. And we actually both have a pretty far back history, so it's kind of nice to see where things have come from and what they are now. And so we're deciding that this podcast is going to be called Table Talk. So that's the idea we're going to roll with for now. And today is more of like a get to know things that we kind of have, like our history and all the fun stuff there. And then we'll kind of break down and go into more detailed topics as we move on to different podcast days.
There will definitely be rolling, and there will also be breaking down. I can guarantee it. And you are, to be clear, a legally distinct creature with 9 or 10 eyes. Or 8 eyes. Yes.
I have so many eyes. I have more eyes than the actual legally distinct creature that I'm heavily inspired by.
Yeah, no, I mean, you told me what you were inspired by, and I was like, that is such a good idea. You're so smart.
Well, to be fair, the Dark Knight in my life just was warning me. He's like, if you do that, make sure you do not like go like, because you know,
don't be too literal because it'll be a problem.
Yes, he was like, safety first, and I was like, yes sir, I will do that.
I mean, we all know that wizards are known for one thing in particular, and it's being litigious. In fantasy.
Sending lawyers.
Wizards would be the ones though that would like send fantasy lawyers out to people. You know what I mean? Like you've seen Buffy, right?
Yes.
And have you seen Angel?
No.
Oh, do you know anything about it?
Yes.
Like how there was this big, like the main antagonists were a law firm of demons.
Yes.
This seems like very on brand for a fantasy storyline as well. Wait a minute, I know the legally distinct thing. I thought it was they now use AI to make their content. I mean, there's that too. Listen.
Oh, we won't get into the drama today, but
which CCG company sent the actual Pinkertons after somebody? I couldn't tell you what company it was, but it does sound like something a wizard or a magician might do on the sword. I mean, wait, no, that's actually a property. Anyway, no. I think it's safe to say that both of us have a lot of our experience in D&D as our sort of primary RPG.
Yes, I would say so. That's my biggest majority. Like if it was a pie, they would be like most of the pie. For me.
I think that's pretty common in the tabletop scene, that it does have the biggest sort of cultural share of just media representation in general. Especially recently, but honestly, even back in the day, there was sort of a period in the late 90s where there were a few other games that kind of popped up that have retained cultural knowledge, but haven't really stayed consistent in the actual playing side of things. So I think it's pretty normal for people to have a lot of experience in D&D, but there are a lot of tabletop games. And tell me, do you also suffer from the problem where you maybe don't play a lot of different systems, but you collect a lot of systems?
So yes, for sure, because the Dark Knight upstairs, he pretty much runs a tavern that, you know, can purchase all of these wonderful tales, and I have so many books, and yeah, like the bookshelves are full. But I'm even worse, guys. I have a big problem. I am a limited editions gal. I love collecting limited editions. It's bad. I have this beautiful limited edition what's it called? The GM book and the monster manual and all that. I have
the full player set, the DMG, the PHP, and the monster manual. I also have the collector's edition for 5th edition. They look really good.
The foil one, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So it's I have a problem.
What? Okay. How many? Could you even hazard a guess to how many dice you have?
So me alone at one. I have 5 rotating sets, and I have a special rose quartz set for GMing. I've only ever GM'd once. The rose quartz set hates me. But I have 5 or 6 right now. But I am gonna start making my own eventually, so I'm gonna have way more. I'm gonna be like, I want to keep these ones. So it's gonna be
ladies,
crazy.
Gentlemen, and others. My co-host has an extremely high level of self-control. If you only have 6 sets of dice, I can't tell you how many sets of dice I have. It's a lot. It's a lot.
See, the problem is that those are the 6 set of dice I currently actively use. I don't know where my other sets are. When we moved house, I had more. I don't know where they are, so I just count the ones I'm actively using.
I mean, that's fair, I suppose. I started getting like nice wooden dice like holders and dice trays though. So like then I started getting a nice tray or a nice holder, and then I'd be like, well, I need a set of dice to go with it. It's a problem. Yeah, current is the key word is what I hear.
Yeah, current is definitely the key word. Because I have a bag. So we used to go to other people's houses before we started hosting at our own home. And so I have this bag, and it has my dice tray, and it has my dice in it, and all my player cards and my character sheets. And it's all in that bag. So everything is there. And there's the 6 sets of dice are also, I carry them around. Because you never know, because some days one will roll bad and it's like, oh, that's not it. But
that's not it. Yeah,
that set's not it. So we'll try a different one. And then we have friends too that sometimes forget. So like I have my spare. Because
like you do.
The GM, he has his cursed. He has a really cursed set. So there's a player set that he has. It's so cursed. And
like it just rolls bad, or it's cursed like
it rolls
cursed
so
looking.
Bad.
Oh
no.
Yeah.
Really pretty set. It's like a ashy black, like see-through with red lettering or numbering, and it's really pretty. Went with the character that it was bought for. Rolls terrible for any player character, but he used to use them for GMing from time to time. He stopped. Was so violent. He was so violent. He would roll so high when he was GMing with those dice. But even people that borrowed it for like playing with the character, cursed.
Well, that's right. The GM has extracted all of the power from them. Headdorf says, I have Purple Heart dice boxes. I too have Purple Heart dice boxes, and I love them. Purple Heart is such a pretty wood. I also got possibly the nerdiest accessory that I've seen yet, which is basically a leather gun holster, but it is for a dice holder. So it it goes on your belt, and it's leather, and then like a one line thick of dice in a wooden dice tray like slots into it, and then you can like snap it closed. It's amazing.
That sounds so cool. Oh my god.
Yeah, I'll have to send you a picture later. I have a lot. I sort of got into this problem where my friend and I would go to PAX every year, and we would just sort of buy increasingly expensive dice. And then I saw that there was a set of dice made from yak horn. And I was like, first of all, that's very unique. Second of all, that's cool. Third of all, yaks have kind of become a reference in my friend group because of Guild Wars 1. And like my Wi-Fi network is named Yaks Bend. So I was like, one of these days I'm going to edge hard enough to get this yaks dice, but they're very expensive. So I have not taken that step yet, but they're very, very expensive. But I do have aluminum dice. Ooh, I'll have to show you once. I have a set of like aluminum cage dice. So they are in the outer shape is the same shape as the dice, but then inside of it, disconnected, is like also it's like a nested set of dice, like the die within like a die cage that's made out of aluminum. They look really cool. They rattle when you roll them.
My God. I'm so jealous. I just have regular dice, and then my bougie ones are my rose quartz, and that's it.
I love gemstone dice. We bought our DM malachite dice, and they look so cool, and they roll so wonky because they're obviously not like, you know, they're not balanced in a way that normal dice can be balanced because they're made of stone. And so you will literally watch them and they'll look like a loaded die because they'll like roll and then they'll like curve sideways and then flip to the other side. And they have so much stank on them and it's so funny. We can't really notice any like particular bias that they seem to be like always rolling high or low, but they always take a journey. You know, they take a journey when they go.
That's crazy. I bought I think it's Bloodstone.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I bought a set for the GM as a gift, and he likes the color red. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh yeah, there's like veins of red in this stone. It's so beautiful. Tell me how the set that I got
is all gray.
It only had one thing of red, and it was on the default.
Yeah, that is a challenge with gemstone dice, and some gemstone dice sellers will allow you to put some toggles in to be like more or less inclusion or something like that. And sometimes have to change the price a little bit, but that is definitely a challenge that you can have with gemstone dice. Is the reality of it is not always uniform. Y'all seen the dice maker who makes the squishy dice? I have not seen squishy dice.
I've seen somebody make like dice molds and then use it for like making gummies, which is terrible because then you can't tell the difference between a dice and an actual candy.
Especially with children, that's very dangerous.
I think they make it very explicit though when they advertise it.
They look like slime with bone inside. That's incredible. Ooh. I love the really custom dice where people do with molds that have objects inside of them. I think those are really cool looking. I think that's a really cool looking.
I have a really bad habit of wanting to know how things are made. And so I went down this rabbit hole. I was like squinting at this set of dice and I was like, how did they get the dice to do that? There was like a design within the design. And I finally figured out that they have these blank molds that they'll cast the resin or whatever material out of first, and then they'll put it into the actual mold. And my mind was blown. I was like,
yeah,
I never considered it, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But listen, we've already derailed into talking only about dice. Yeah.
Listen, dice.
We'll have to have a show and tell episode sometime.
Oh my God, I will go dig out my dice, and we should.
They're everywhere. I actually bought several dice trays holders at Ren Fair because they were a lot cheaper than some of the other ones that I found, but they had really cool designs on them. Yes. Anyway, so in our notes, we actually made notes. Listen, folks, normally this is pure stream of consciousness. Grybach doesn't take notes for stream, but I also do have a history of doing several hundred episodes of a podcast, and we did make notes for that. So I made some color-coded notes. Wild, I know, shocking. So our first thing that we put in here was, how long have you been playing tabletop RPGs, Celine?
I have been playing tabletop RPGs for around since 2013. I know this is gonna date me, but we're hags and I don't know,
warlocks or whatever.
Warlocks over here. So,
man, I almost said something really cancelable accidentally as my mouth almost tripped up over saying it.
Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't cancel yourself.
Yeah, that would be really bad.
Don't do it. I probably could have started playing sooner, but my friends at the time, like especially when I was younger, did not advertise the tabletop RPG to me very well, because I was already playing like video games and like online MMORPGs. So I was very spoiled, and I was like, why would I write pieces of paper with numbers and keep track of all that stuff when I could just play a video game and it does all that for me? They didn't tell me about the role play. They didn't tell me about anything, like how fun character creation is and all that stuff. They advertised to me so poorly. I was like, what the heck, man?
I think a lot of people
doing this sooner.
I think a lot of people just don't fundamentally understand tabletop role-playing games unless they're like shown it somehow. It is hard to conceive of, especially when you're trying to fit it to either a tabletop board game or a video game, because it's really not like either of those things, and it's closer to a video game nowadays than a board game. But if you don't have any experience with it, it's just such an alien concept that people think that you're just playing a board game, and you're really not. Why is my eye wonky? Maybe I need to clean my glasses. I don't know, whatever. Yeah, so I, speaking of dating yourself, I started in 2005. I was in college. I had some friends.
You're dating yourself so much.
It's fine. The information's out there. I'm older than dirt. I had some friends in high school that played D&D, and I really wanted to play with them. But A, they never invited me, and B, like, I don't know, they had enough people probably and whatever. But it definitely piqued my interest, and I understood it at least vaguely. And so I kind of always wanted to check it out, especially because the friends that played it were definitely the kind of people that I think would have been fun to play with back in the day. And I met my DM in college. He became a friend of mine very quickly. We bonded over pirated anime episodes. I mean, legally obtained episodes of anime. Yeah. But you know, it came up that he had played D&D, and we actually played a session. I believe we actually were both players in our first session, if I recall correctly. But then that was sort of a quickie one shot that went very disastrously in a very hilarious way, but it's fine. And then we started with him taking over as the DM for some more permanent campaigns. And basically that friend group that played D&D in college together, we have stayed friends, and most of us have still played D&D or a D&D like game together even up through last year. And some of us were together in D&D games literally for the past decade. So listen, D&D is a great friendship bonding tool if you find the right people.
Absolutely. It's really about the people, I would say, because my first GM that I ever got to play with, he actually is the one who was my officiant for my wedding with my husband. Yeah, so
they've really seen the highs and lows. Yeah,
they married us, so it was very special to me, you know, like our bonds were very close, because he was kind of like a dad figure to us, like both of us. So we were like, we wouldn't want anyone else but you. And he was in hard times at the time too, so I guess it was kind of something to uplift him. Because like he would tell us that the games that he would run for us were like the thing he was most looking forward to. So my husband, Mr. Dark Knight upstairs, is my current GM, and it's a little bit of a struggle when you know, can see things that are being prepared and you're like, oh, what's that? It's a little behind the curtain, but you know, I think it's fun to some extent. I'm really good at keeping secrets, so I don't tell the table, but
that's good. Listen, fine, never mind. Don't worry about it. Listen, you can have the couples goals like Matt Mercer and Marisha Ray, you know?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I can roleplay, but I don't know if I'm that good.
I know, but they have the whole like, separation of information and, because obviously, he plans quite epic campaigns. So you gotta isolate the information just a little bit.
Oh yeah, no. We had one campaign that lasted for like 4 years. It was crazy long. And I don't like to get spoiled, and he was really careful about like, I have these things, so like just don't come into the office.
Just don't look. Okay. Just don't touch them.
Don't look. Don't ask. Don't question. But I also I kind of like to bounce ideas off of him too, because he could get like writer's blocks sometimes.
Oh sure.
So he'll come in and he'll be like, "Hey, what do you think?" And I'm like, "Well, this character has this, so you could tie in this plot, and we're here now, so this could happen." And like, he'll pick and choose what he takes from me, but.
Honestly, I think this is maybe something that's very underrated or not practiced very well in the community, but I actually think that it's the best D&D is when everybody is talking about what they want to accomplish and what they are thinking about. And I think that would help a lot of DMs if their players said like, long term, I want to accomplish this thing, and I am currently thinking about trying to do this thing by talking to this person and doing this thing. And it really can help because obviously I think a lot of players view the DM as an adversary, and the DM is controlling your adversaries. They shouldn't be your adversary. Obviously some DMs are adversarial and that's not great, but I think that a lot of the time they're in the dark about what you're planning to do. And a lot of the time people are also kind of in the dark about what they're planning to do. But even giving a vague outline or a vague thought process can help so much, because DMs want you to succeed, or at least succeed in telling a story about trying to succeed. And the more that you can give them a general idea, the better they can help guide you into those situations or make those situations make more narrative sense. And I do think that that's something that groups like Critical Role and like Dimension 20 actually do a lot, is they do talk a lot about what they're trying to accomplish rather than just saying like, I want to do this, or I want to say this. They're like, I want to say this because I'm trying to make this happen, or I'm trying to communicate this, or I'm, so like eliminating that layer of mystery can really like help a lot with that. So, I mean, I think that's actually, obviously you get a little bit closer of a relationship since it's your husband, but I think that that's, if anybody starts playing D&D, you should really consider that.
Well, ironically, when I played D&D, you know how like they have the regular story and like the Pantheon and stuff like that? I've always played in homebrew. Yeah, I've always played in a homebrew world. So the first GM, the one that married us, he had his own world. Beautiful world. What was really cool is he was older. And so he had played when he was in college, and his Pantheon was actually his old players. And we actually got to meet some of the old players when we had our wedding. So it was kind of like really cool. Because like my character was a priestess, and she was a priestess for one of the player gods. And then like I got to meet my god. And then
so what did you do that earned you that deity of debauchery? Like what kind of shit did you get up to there, huh?
But because I had played in homebrew games, like you really have to communicate with the GM or the DM, because I had no idea. There was no research I could do. So I'm like, what can I do? What would my motivations be? What can I do within this world? What are my, boundaries or whatever? So I think it's very important for that communication between GM and player. And watching kind of the dynamic with my current table and my husband and as his GMing style, talking about the motivations of the characters and stuff like that can actually help players too, because we had one player, he's very new, never played before, and he was kind of more like lost in the sauce. Like he was trying to be like, oh, let's just move the plot along, I can't participate while this player's storyline is going on, like, and it was like, it's not one dimensional. Like, you can talk to the GM, you can do things simultaneously while other things are happening. Your story doesn't have to stop while someone else's is being explored. Like, you could be doing things actively within the game, but like kind of on the sidelines, you know, like it's not in the forefront, but you make it known to the party that it's happening, and the GM can craft the world around you to help you do that.
I think that I think that's can be a little bit of a dangerous line to thread, because you do have to share the spotlight. So I do think that sometimes players will take that sort of too far in the other direction of like just wanting to do their own thing. And you're like, okay, Timmy, like, do we really need to have you robbing the noble's banner while we're out doing this other unrelated thing? You know, and it's like, no.
That's where the table, I think, comes in, right? Like making sure you're playing with your friends and like people that actually respect you and kind of like enjoy your company and your story. Because I recently actually had an experience where we were doing this one shot and it was all of our friends, and then the GM invited his friend without telling us. So we don't know this guy, and he was extremely disruptive, and he was just not for the party. He was doing his own thing, and we were just like sitting here. Hi, Kiri. We were just sitting here. And we're like, what is happening? And this guy's just doing his own thing. And we're like, okay, we're going to go over here now as a party. If he comes, he comes. If he doesn't, he doesn't. And we were trying to be like inviting and stuff, but he just was really disruptive with the GM too. Like he was just being like rude. And I'm like, you're his friend, you know, you should probably, we're here to all have a good time. So like I can get like, you know, having a little bit of friction or stuff like that, but it was like a one shot. It's not that deep, you know?
Oh man, I'm just reminded of a time where I just sort of sat in on a friend's D&D game and I was not a player, and this was long ago. So I wasn't that experienced, but as you may know, I am definitely full of it and like like teasing people. And so was one of my good friends who was also in our D&D group but was playing with these guys, and they were playing with several people who had never played before. And so their DM, they fell like into a cave that had a bunch of insect like tracks. So they were like small little, like the tracks were a bunch of like small little pinpricks, you know, in the ground, right, rather than like footprints. And I think one of the new players like failed their perception or investigation or nature check or whatever. And so my friend goes, "Oh, I bet these are stilt gnomes." And I'm like, "Oh yeah. They live in the Underdark and they use this to mask their numbers." And he's like, "Exactly. Yes, the stilt gnomes, the wild stilt gnomes." And the fact that we just said it so quickly and so in sync that it sounded like we were completely aware of a real thing that definitely was real, trust me. And they believed it for at least a while, and it was so funny. I love that kind of stuff. It's so funny.
Yeah, that's fun. That is fun. I like that because
I haven't thought of stilt gnomes in years.
I should ask my GM to add
stilt gnomes.
We're in the Underdark right now. It could happen.
It could happen.
It could happen.
You know, that's how they evade some of those dangerous predators. You know, they like maybe their stilt hits something and a tentacle grabs their stilt out, and then they can just jump off the stilts. And they're like, well, you know, the chasm creeper is dumb. It thinks it got us. You know, it's just eating the stilts. It's fine. Legitimately, you could do it. Yeah.
Yes, they are about a boot.
So speaking of being full of shit and also liking different aspects, one of the things that we also talked about was how there are a lot of different player archetypes in terms of the style. I think role-playing games are very unique in that they offer a lot of ways to interact with them. And so I thought we should maybe talk a little bit about some of the different player archetypes and which types we personally felt like we identified a little bit more with.
I'm big on roleplay. I love roleplay. I love to like be immersed, have the characters interact, have the world around us like change and shift depending on what we do. Have having like consequences that are lasting is kind of nice too. The way my husband GMs is kind of like, he's not really punishing, but like he's more of like the rule for cool. So like if something cool happens, like he'll let it happen. And it affects the world. Like I had one instance where I kind of came up with a speech on the spot, and we were close to the end of that 4-year campaign, and I was trying to rally the troops. You know, we were fighting the big bad, world ending, and I came up with a pretty epic speech, if I do say so myself. And my character was originally just a bard. She wasn't a noble, had no titles. She just was like, I just want to write a cool story, so I'm gonna follow these band of adventurers around as they do. And she ended up becoming a noble, like not by anything like I wanted to do. It just like greatness just landed in her lap. So she rallied the troops, and he gave me like a bunch of bonuses that would have like otherwise not been, because I actually role played my speech. And like I even moved my table. They were like, oh, and I was like, yes, I did it. Okay, that's it. We go fight the big bad now. So I'm heavily invested in the world building, heavily invested in like other players' stories too, because I want to see how things turn out. And there's this one, our remote friend that I told you about. He was playing this like really edgy like loner character, and he ended up doing a lot of stuff through the campaign, which was like slow burn romancing one of our like NPCs, like our main NPCs. And like at the end of the game, like he actually like, you know, got with her, and it was like we see the whole slow burn of 4 years worth of a campaign come to a beautiful climax. And I was like, yes, that makes me happy. I can't do puzzles though.
I'm trying so hard, Celine.
What? Don't do it. Behave.
Listen. I'm putting the inner demons on a leash. I'm trying so hard.
You're doing great. You are doing fantastic. Your turn.
You're just serving me up some such easy home runs. Anyway, yes, I also like role playing. I think that it's something that I didn't used to be as good at. I have always liked immersion, which is not exactly the same as role playing. I like immersion. I've always liked immersion, but one thing that I would say was a fault of mine was that I had a hard time sort of disengaging the smarter, more tactical side of my brain. And so how should I say this? I mean, often I didn't play like dumb characters. I didn't necessarily play like high int characters either, but there was definitely a tendency to try and like make good decisions, if that makes sense. But I've really, especially as I've gotten a little bit older and I've played a lot of D&D, I've definitely tried to embrace making decisions that I know are bad because it seems more like something a character would do. And some of that comes down to playing characters that are a little bit more different from myself. In addition to that, of course. So, and some of that comes down to just like DM trust of trusting that your DM is going to make it an interesting story instead of just being like, oh, okay, well then you die anyway.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a big thing.
So I do enjoy role playing, but I do often play characters that at least share some of my personality. So sometimes I don't have to role play as hard in that sense, but I do very much enjoy immersion. I really enjoy the social aspects. I tend to play a lot of high charisma characters because I, as the player, tend to often take the lead in like talking to NPCs and especially bullshitting to NPCs. And so some of that is just sort of the natural table dynamics that we have that feels like that's something that I tend to do as a person. And so then it would really be a weird mismatch to play a character that is really bad at that, considering how often I do it. But I do really like that type of stuff and the sort of political side of things. I am not a fan of puzzles, and this is no fault of my DMs because I recognize that most of the other players at our table like puzzles. There is something about And what I should say, I don't like them as much in D&D. And I think what that comes down to actually is that a lot of the time I get like too immersed and try and think of things like a real world, which like can cause weirdness with puzzles, and or I maybe like think too hard about possibilities with puzzles. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
I think too deep into it.
Yeah, like, so I think that what our DM realized is that we need fewer degrees of freedom in our puzzles.
Yes.
Right? Like, he needs to restrict things that we think we can do, because it's not that he doesn't want to figure it out. It's just that, like, it makes it so much more impossible to get through something that he thought would be relatively trivial, because we're just, like, thinking too hard about it, right? There's too many possibilities.
I think we ran into the same issue. Seduce the door.
Yeah. Dude, have you seen that knob?
Oh my goodness. Have you seen the knob?
She a little flat, but like flat is justice.
Flat is justice.
You give me wood, you know what I mean? Listen, I'm just letting it all out right now while we're on ads.
Yes. While we're on ads. Oh my goodness. You're doing great. The other thing too for me is that I don't normally like to do politics, just because like I'm not normally a politic person. But my character ended up in a situation where, like, you know, she became noble, she had to play politics, and it was kind of funny because the people that started off wanting to play politics didn't engage in the politics. So like the GM was like, do you guys not want to do this? And I was like, no, you can leave it in. And then eventually I got there and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this now. And I kind of feel the same with you, because like I was newer, so like I would make decisions that I thought as a person were better, but like I don't think the character would have known. But we kind of wrote it off as she's got plenty of time spent at this point, you know, with tactical people. So she's not tactical herself, but she can make like informed decisions. And then kind of bouncing it off of the tactical player too kind of helped like sell the deal.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that rolls into our next topic pretty good though, like what types of characters we normally play.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I was going to just briefly mention a few other types of players. There's definitely players that enjoy the combat and loot goblining. I won't say that I definitely like the combat, but I would not like the combat if that's literally all that the game was.
Oh my god,
and
we had so many, what do you call them? Murder hobos?
Murder hobos?
Yep.
Yeah.
We had a few at our old table. They're gone now.
And the thing is that that is valid for some tables. Some groups, it is just a war game. And to be honest, that is what D&D was originally. D&D is an offshoot of Chainmail, a tactical war game that they sort of wrote some rules into to like be a role-playing game. But like it had its origins in tactical tabletop role-playing or tactical tabletop warfare. And a lot of the early D&D was all about dungeon delving, and like the idea of actually role-playing was actually a much more relatively recent move. Well, maybe not, but like definitely not in the beginning. In the beginning, a lot of it was very just dry and mechanical, and you expected that your characters would die early and often, and you didn't get that attached to them. And so, you know, it's not weird in that sense, because that is actually how the game started anyway. Sometimes you need to be a murder hobo, but not in every campaign. Yeah, true. There's a time and a place for everything, and there's a table for everything. One of the greatest strengths about D&D is also its greatest weakness, which is that it depends so heavily on the people that you are playing the game with. And that doesn't mean that they are good or bad. It means that they are good or bad together with you. Like there is a table for every type of player, but if that's not the table you have access to or the type of table that you're sitting at, it's not going to be a good game for you or for them, whichever. But if it is, when it gels and when it clicks, it is the most satisfying and like best bonding experience a group of people can ever have. So like it's, you know, yeah. Also, thank you for the 22 months earned. What a legend! What a mad lad! Also, high opt.
Wow.
Welcome to the lurking, talking about TTRPGs. But yes, types of characters that we like to play. I like playing tricksy characters. I don't actually really play rogues, but I like characters with a lot of situational abilities. I played a warlock, a Fey Pact warlock for 7 years, from level 1 to 17, and it was extremely fun. I played it in a way that I think most people don't play warlocks, but I actually low-key think that it's the most mechanically satisfying way to play them. Because the way that their spell slots work is so weird, but it works really well for like out of combat utility if you use your spells that recharge to do things that you can take time to do. And so I had all sorts of spells that were about like hindering enemies, reshaping the landscape, teleporting, flying, invisibility, like plane travel, you know, like all sorts of things like that. I had maybe one damage spell that wasn't Eldritch Blast, because Eldritch Blast, it does very good damage, and
it does the job.
You only have a couple spell slots. It's like there's way more value in, you know, giving 3 of your characters the ability to fly than to drop 1 fireball most of the time. You know what I mean? And so I really like characters that can think on their feet and react to a lot of situations dynamically, and that's both in combat and out of combat, which is why I tend to like characters that are high charisma, because I feel the same way in conversation. I like rolling with the punches. I like busting out a tactical lie or being persuasive on the spot, like reacting quickly and being able to take actions like that. And so I really like characters like Bard and Warlock. I would probably like Sorcerers more if they, in 5th edition at least, weren't so confined to only explosion spells. But if there was a sorcerer that was focused entirely on like illusion and enchantment magic, I would be all over that. That'd be great. I mean, but again, that's basically what the Bard is. So like that's, yeah.
There was somebody that played, I don't know if...
Oh, there is the like divine sorcerer, I guess.
Well, I forget what it was. I thought it was like an abjuration mage or something. I forget.
There's the abjuration wizard. Wizards have a lot of flexibility, but because they're not charisma characters, that like loses some of that dynamism.
Yeah, no, I think the reason why that person played the abjuration wizard is because they as a person were charismatic and they were willing to roll with the punches if they role played and they just rolled poorly.
Yeah, just make your wizard charisma heavy. I mean, fair. That's legitimate too. I will say I don't really like prepared spellcasting. It's very powerful. Like, don't get me wrong on that. But I actually much prefer when you have to like commit to your abilities in one way or another. So I tend to also just like characters that just learn spells and then that they just learn them and that's it. In 3rd edition, this was especially true. Do you remember 3rd edition spellcasting, Celine?
I did 3.5 and my god. Yeah, it was very whatchamacallit?
A lot of bookkeeping.
Yes. Oh my god. It was kind of constraining. Like it was really hard to be a spellcaster, and it was definitely a breath of fresh air with 5e. There are some things I liked better in 3.5. Like the difficulty of like the monsters and stuff like that. I do think they kind of eased up on like some of the monsters, and I think monsters should be strong.
I mean, DMs can always fix that. I think I think systemically I prefer it. One thing I will say is that ironically, well, maybe not ironically, the fact that they made all spellcasting easier in 5th edition, I think actually just made prepared spellcasters way stronger, because the whole trade-off in 3rd edition was like, a sorcerer knows way fewer spells than a wizard or a cleric, but they also can cast more spells than a wizard or a cleric per day. And because they were a known spellcaster, you didn't have to prepare the slots, and so you had flexibility both in the number of spells you can cast and in the makeup of spells that you can cast. And in 5th edition, they were like, well, that's a lot of paperwork, so prepared spellcasters don't have to worry about that anymore. And you're like, okay, so what do the other ones get instead? And they're like, oh, you can cast the same number of spells as the other guy does.
That's
and you're like, and they gave a few things to sorcerers, but it's not nearly enough to make up for having the full spell list at your hands pretty much whenever you want. So that is something that I wish that they had done a little bit differently in 5th edition, was lean into, I mean, I'm always a proponent of classes having unique class mechanics that shape the way that a common mechanic would interact with them more. And that is why I like Warlocks a lot. I think that the Eldritch Invocation system is a really elegant way to have character diversity built in. And I wish that more classes had something like that. But anyway, I digress. Spellcasting, 3rd edition, yada yada.
Yeah, no, I definitely lean heavily into spellcasters. My first character was a priest. I lean towards healers, not so much because I do like healing, but I also end up getting into these tables where the Unga Bunga boys are already all taken, and I'm like, I'd like to be balanced. I know the GM will accommodate if we're not balanced, but it just helps the table dynamic, because then you're not scrounging around and fighting over loot and the healing pots that we do get or whatever. My second character I ever played was a bard, and that's when I kind of got into this really cool situation that's kind of similar to how you enjoy playing characters. My bard didn't have any damaging spells at all, not even Vicious Mockery. All she had was utility spells. She was extremely useful outside of combat, and I don't think in the entire campaign my character actively ever killed any other person. I don't think she ever killed anybody. She had this one instance where some guy exploded next to a character she was hold personing, and he died from the explosion, but that wasn't her fault.
That wasn't me. Seriously.
It wasn't me. But other than that, she's never killed a person. But she was the type of bard where I forget, was it Majesty? I forget which college it was.
the Fae, the one where you had the majestic presence. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but I know it. Yeah,
yeah, so she had that. But
was it Glamour? Glamour Bard?
It might be.
I think it was Glamour Bard. Yeah.
Yeah. But the big thing for me was the tactics, because when you did Bardic Inspiration with that college, your teammates that you chose could move their regular movement speed and not get an attack of opportunity. And it was really broken.
It's very powerful. Yeah. Any out of turn movement is very powerful.
Yeah. And then they got temporary hit points too. So it was a good deal. And we didn't have a healer during that game, so I was the healer as a bard, which is really tough.
I mean, yes and no. The thing is with 5th edition is that since players are equally powerful at 1 hit points as they are at full hit points, the reality is that most of the time your action is better spent hindering the enemy in some way, either by debilitating them or damaging them or whatever, than it is spending it to heal. So most of the time, the best healing is just a bonus action healing to just give a little bit or to plop people back up. That's actually something that Baldur's Gate implemented really well, which is that if you got brought from 0 hit points back to positive, you only got a move and a bonus action that turn. So you would lose your action if you drop below 0. So they actually gave you a penalty for yo-yoing hit points in Baldur's Gate 3. That does not exist in 5th edition. So honestly, bards are actually pretty good healers in terms of actual combat mechanics, not in terms of raw healing numbers, but
right. And that's what I did, is I just kept the party alive when I could, and then I would just do nonsense. But one thing that I chose to do as a player is stuff happens to your character in the world. and my character actually got kidnapped at one point, and so some of the spells I chose after the kidnapping situation were like portal and like open
things
like
so
open
like this
door.
how to deal with this if it happens again.
Yes. And so like I kind of let the things that happened to her shape the spells I chose so that it made canonical sense. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish. Oh, I was about to say it kind of worked out too, because at the very end she was a tiefling. So at the very end, she was kind of like a nightcrawler. She was just teleporting everywhere. And it was like crazy funny, because there was one time she had to rescue somebody like falling. And it was like they were going to die because they had fallen off of like a dragon.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I do the gate, and then I go up there, and then I do the portal, because then that's where you could actually like bring a person with you. And then it's like I angled the portal in such a way to where it yeets us horizontally instead of vertically, and it was like crazy.
Yeah, I love all of those kinds of spells. I think that those are extremely fun. Also, welcome in Raiders, welcome in Pumpkin Cat Nietzsche. Thank you for the raid. I see you were playing Overwatch too. I'm sorry for your sanity. This is my good friend Celine, and she and I are starting a podcast about tabletop RPGs, and we're going through just sort of our general preferences, feelings, likes, dislikes, etc. So I hope you enjoy chilling out, and feel free to chime in and chat anything you might have. Fireball in a 10x10 room is my favorite spell based. I once used Fireball in a sewer where there was a lot of gas, and so it was more effective than normal. It was very funny. I actually, so your example, I actually had a very similar thing where I know I've told chat this, but I learned one of my new favorite spells ever in 5th edition with my Warlock, which I never really looked at before I was playing a Fey Pact Warlock, which is Dream.
Oh.
Yeah. Do you know what Dream does? Warhammer 40K?
No.
No. Yes, I have a couple people on YouTube also, by the way. Hi, YouTube. But we're going to talk about Warhammer 40K a little bit towards the end. But so Dream in 5th edition, it's a 5th level spell, so it's a high level spell. So basically you can cast it on somebody, and I think it's limited to anybody on the same plane of existence as you, and they have to be asleep. But basically if they're asleep, then you invade their dream and you have full control over everything that happens in it. And then basically it's like, so if you decide to make it like horrifying or painful or whatever, like basically if you try to make it harm them, then they get to make a saving throw against it, but otherwise they don't. And if they fail their saving throw, then it deals 3d6 psychic damage, which isn't very much, but it prevents them from gaining a long rest benefit, which is like, okay, but that's one of those things that like, it's kind of a weird situation, because like then the DM has to decide how many spells and abilities they'd used on the previous day. Like it gets awkward, right? So it's a spell that I feel like a lot of people don't pay that much attention to. Again, especially because it's a 5th level spell. But 2 things about that spell stand out. One, I'm a warlock, which means that at the level I got to cast that 3 times an hour, because short rest recharges your spells. So for me, a 5th level spell was maybe not a throwaway, but like it's not nearly as big of an expenditure as it is for a wizard, right? So that alone already made it more appealing, but it is also very handy because if you're not using it offensively, it becomes the best communication spell in the game, because it lasts for the entire time and you can make anything happen. So you can contact your ally that's 10,000 miles away and be like, hey, this is where we are on the map. This is the cave we've been exploring. This is the Draco Lich that we found. Here's what it looks like. Here's the ritual it's performing. Can you help me look up like what these things are? Can you go to a library and maybe find some information for me tomorrow? Like, I'll be back. And you have full control over this thing. And so using it to actually communicate with allies was pretty much exclusively what I used it for. My DM actually was very nice, and he warned me like, I don't know if you're actually going to get that much use out of being able to do this to the enemy. I'm like, oh, no. I'm never planning to cast it on the enemy. Yeah, he was like, oh, carry on then.
Yeah,
but
they're really good.
You know what happened?
Uh-oh.
An enemy started casting it on me. and they did want to harm me.
Oh no.
And so, which, you know, fine, valid. And so after that, there is a warlock invocation that means that you don't have to sleep anymore. And I spent my next level getting that warlock invocation because I'm like, never again. I gotta deal with this shit. Could have sent love notes to the enemy. Yeah, big kissies. Yeah, exactly. Enemies to lovers, facts. Yeah.
Ooh, I love that.
So I definitely had at least one or two occasions where I also took some spells very specifically based on like what had happened to us in the past or what, you know, was currently ongoing happening rather than, you know, what have you. But
yeah, like it's something that would be like, oh yeah, this would be more beneficial, but like this makes more sense like canonically. Yeah, as long as the spell isn't like trash. There's definitely some players that are like, I take this spell because the lore of it is cool. And I'm like, yeah, but it's like so bad. Like, you really think that, like, I would maybe talk to your GM about changing the spell then, but but I was going to say, I noticed that, we haven't talked to Chad about this, but I noticed that you never played 4th edition, which is a controversial edition of D&D. First of all, I don't hate 4th edition. I understand why it got a lot of backlash, but I actually think you would have really enjoyed some of the combat elements of it based on how you described your character. Yeah. Because
they were very explicit in having roles for classes.
Oh.
So, which turned a lot of people off, and I understand why. There were 4 roles. There was, I don't remember if they were actually called tank. Tank is not what it was, but it was like defender. I think it was defender. Striker, which is DPS. Controller, which is mostly focused around both area control, but also like low damage, high area spells. And then leader, which is what you would classically consider support. But what they because the game was designed to be much more, I would say, tactically interesting on a turn-by-turn basis, there were a lot of abilities that involved movement and repositioning. And they basically tried to have role parity across every, like, they called them power sources. So like arcane, divine, there was martial, which is what you would consider like, you know, the fighter, the rogue. So there was a martial leader, which they basically were a battle sergeant that like shouted inspiration at you to heal you. But all of their abilities were, well, not all, but a lot of their abilities allowed you to like reposition your own allies on your turn to like move them around like a chessboard, or like you let your allies make attacks with you. Like your action is to just let somebody else make an attack, or all sorts of things like that. And it was a really, really interesting class. And I'm really sad that they didn't really port it into 5th edition. The most that they did was they kind of gave some of it to the superiority dice on fighters. But those were things that the warlord was doing literally like every turn, you know, was just doing crazy shit. And there was an adage at the time that like the barbarian wields the great axe, the warlord wields the barbarian, like, and they were very powerful because they were like, yes, the person who hits good, what if I just made him hit good again? Like that, I don't need to be strong at hitting people. I just need to make him hit people. Yeah. Or run away or whoop, whoop, whoop.
No, I think I would have really enjoyed that. I personally do like when there's like a role for everyone to play, because sometimes people get lost in the sauce and they're like, don't know what's happening. And then, because like at one point when I was playing that bard, I was the rogue, I was the bard, and I was the tactician. And I was like, and the healer. And I was like, what is happening right now? Like, I don't want to be all these things, but
that is kind of Bard's niche. Like Bard is kind of low-key a rogue and a spellcaster thrown together.
No, they have that jack of all trades thing. Like it truly is the case that
and
they
expertise.
Are a jack of all trades. Yes.
Like literally, you can be just as good at picking locks or sneaking as a rogue can. Like,
and I was.
Yeah. Bards.
It was really funny. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. But I ended up like pretty much taken on healer roles. Like I've done a druid, I've done the priestess, and then like the bard. So I take up the healing role.
There was another interesting aspect of 4th edition's healing that was very different, which is that every character had a number of healing surges, which is kind of like hit dice in 5th edition. But a healing surge always healed you for, I think, a quarter of your maximum hit points. So if you had more hit points, your healing surge was worth more. And the healers did not heal you with dice like, like a cleric does, where they're like, oh, you gain 2d8 hit points. They let you spend one of your surges. So a character could run out of the ability to be healed because they burned through all of their healing surges, and you just can't heal them anymore. Like, their body is giving out. And
my God.
It's a big shift in thinking, but I actually think it was a really interesting way to move things. And I'm kind of sad that they moved away from it, because on the one hand, it's very un-D&D like to be like, well, why can't the cleric heal him? Right? But at the same time, I think there's a kind of logic of like, you have pumped so much healing energy into this poor idiot's body that it's just giving out. Like, she just can't keep going. Yeah, she's just exhausted it. And it's not based on your ability. It's based on their ability to keep trucking. And different classes had different numbers of healing surges and things like that.
I like that. I like that because it gives a level of urgency too. So like, you don't want to be careless because the healer can't always heal you, because at some point your body gives out. Like, you cannot retain any more healing. And like, I feel like that's a really cool mechanic. That is too bad that they took it out, because you could like heal forever, like, if that was the case. And
well, there was also it was also much more limited. Like leaders could only heal like twice per combat. I mean, it's a lot. Like, a quarter of their hit points or more per heal is a lot. Like, and it was a bonus action, so they also got to do something. So it was very and also I believe every character could take a second wind once per combat as a standard action to spend their own healing surge. It actually might have been half, not a quarter. It might have even been more healing than I'm thinking. But so like it was, but 4th edition was very much more based around the idea of like wearing out your party's resources. And I think that that affected every level of the game design, and in a way that I think both doesn't fit every kind of campaign, which is kind of what made it have a lot harder time, but also not a lot of the way that people like to play D&D. Like, as much as D&D is not balanced around one big boss fight where everybody blows their entire load, like, the game is not balanced for that. That's a heyday for the wizards and the clerics who get to just have 30 goddamn spells to blow. That's really not how the game is supposed to be played, quote unquote. And 4th edition really made it so that everybody was on pretty even footing in terms of resources per day and resources per combat. And yeah, I think they had a lot of really good ideas, but not always the best. Not the best execution, because in a lot of ways it didn't, quote, feel like D&D.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, my GMs just never played it. Like, the one GM that did 3.5 was the GM I first had, and then the second GM, he was starting GMing when 5 was out, so we just rotated to 5 right away.
5 is a very good addition to get into. Yeah.
It was very nice. Like I said, prior to our stream, I felt like a lot more freedom, for sure. Like, a lot more opportunities to make a difference on your turn. Because like, I felt like sometimes for 3.5, I just felt like I did one thing, and then it would take 5 million years to come back to me, and I do one thing, and then another 5 million years, and then like the other people that actually had extra stuff they could do just built into their kit, they were like doing all kinds of things, and then I'd come back to me and I was like, yes, I move here, I do the thing.
I do the thing, the end.
And that is it. Goodbye. I go back to eating my potato chips.
Yeah. I will say that I think a lot of people sometimes get a little bit misguided and try and fit things into D&D. That D&D is a fantastic game that both of us have played a lot. It does not do everything perfectly by any means. There are a lot of things it doesn't do at all And I think it's a little unfortunate that a lot of the time people will try and shoehorn something into 5th edition that the system just is not designed for, and vice versa. People will play other systems and they'll try and play it like D&D, and it's like, this game is not D&D. It's not supposed to play like D&D, you know? So I do think that's a little bit unfortunate aspect of it being sort of the gateway game for a lot of people is, you know, not knowing how to navigate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did briefly also play Pathfinder, and it was nice too, but I think it
First edition
ran
or
into
second
this-
edition?
I don't know. I don't know which one it was. It was literally like a one shot because we never really played after that. I vaguely remember it. Oh.
Was it like
was
back closer to when you were starting D&D?
Bless you. Huh?
Was it back closer to when you were starting D&D?
I would say it's midway. So like
It was probably was it very similar to 3rd edition D&D?
I guess so. Yeah. Yeah.
That was probably Pathfinder 1st edition then. I don't actually know when 2nd edition came out. It's come out quite a while ago at this point. Like I would guess maybe 5 or 6 years ago was when 2nd edition.
It was definitely 1st edition. Yeah. Yeah. I don't remember much about it. It's vaguely in my mind, but I did play it once, and I kind of agree with you. Like, I think I was trying to approach it more like D&D, and it was not. It was not that.
Well, in a lot of ways, Pathfinder 1st edition was almost literally D&D 3.75 because it literally was an offshot. Well, no, because the company that made it, Paizo, their whole thing was that they made adventures and campaigns for D&D using the open game license. And those were basically the most popular campaigns and modules that existed. And then basically they just said, well, we'll just make our own version. And I think that there was probably a legal issue with D&D. Maybe it was when D&D was going to 4th edition. Well, because I think when D&D went to 4th edition, they basically closed the game license, and it pissed a lot of people off. And that might have been the impetus that made Pathfinder really start being like really take off, is that they were like, well, what if it's what you were used to, but written by the people that wrote the best adventures, you know? And so Pathfinder 1st edition, for better or worse, is a lot closer to 3.5, which better in the way that there's a lot of people that to this day still prefer 3.5 to 5th edition and Pathfinder 1st edition usually, if they had made that jump. And, you know, the worst is if you don't like 3.5 as much, then it's pretty similar. But there is a Pathfinder 2 that I've played one shot of. It wasn't, and a lot of people will still play 3rd edition. Exactly. It's not really for me. I like a lot of the ideas of what they do in Pathfinder, / Pathfinder 2e. And I like the idea of having a lot of like growth based on multiple vectors of your character, like your growth based on your race, based on your class, based on your, you know, things like that. I like that idea. But maybe it's just because I'm old. I've just gotten a little bit too bogged down by system details at a certain point. There are definitely things that they do that I like. I think the 3 action system is pretty cool in general. Which is basically, you know how in D&D you have a move, minor, and standard action. Yeah, in Pathfinder, at least in Pathfinder 2, I don't remember how it works in Pathfinder 1. You just have 3 actions, and moving or attacking is one of those.
Oh, okay.
And so like you could triple move, or you could move and attack twice, or you know, yada yada. Spell casting often takes multiple actions, unless it's like a really fast spell, in which case it would basically be a 1 action that would basically be, you know, like a bonus action. And then I think there's penalties if you attack more than once, if I remember correctly. So like, I don't remember exactly how that works, but I think it's somewhat of an elegant system to allow for like a little bit more versatility in exactly how you want to spend your time. Because I do think that that's one of the areas where D&D falls a little bit short sometimes, where you're like, well, it's this kind of an action to do this thing, but like realistically, you probably could do this thing at the same time you're doing this thing. So like, is it really another action? But like,
That one is more of like, will your GM like take care of you? Because like I know like my old GM was very much a stickler about like, oh, you can't do that because that is this like drinking a potion is whatever
is an action.
Yeah, so like you can't. But like my second GM is like, oh, I'll just take half of your movement and then you can drink the potion and now you have half of your movement instead.
A pretty common house rule was to make it bonus action instead.
Or that, I forget. But I think that's what he did. Because the Unga Bunga boys, they want to take their potion, they want their bonus action to rage, and then they want to attack.
Yeah, the reality of it is it's more like the problem is that potions aren't balanced well enough in terms of the effect to be worth spending your action on. Much like often as a healer, you get way more effect out of hindering the enemies than you do out of giving somebody a D8. You know what I mean? You're like, if it's going to be an action either way, I would rather blind 4 of them than give 1 D8 to somebody or whatever. Yeah. Yeah, it's just what you want to play because there's so many additions. That's exactly right. And yeah, I think everybody has their preferences, us included. But really what you need to do is find what works for you. What are some non-D&D games you've played?
So I've played a little bit, tiny bit, dipped my toes into Cyberpunk Red and the old Cyberpunk. I don't know if Cyberpunk Red is like the original one. So whichever one was before, like I think it was Cyberpunk 2020. It was like
2020 or 2020 something.
Yeah. I did that for like a campaign, like a one shot, and then we recently got back into it and we played a Cyberpunk Red little mini campaign. That was fun. My character died. And then I've also played,
as expected, Sasuga.
Yes. Should a cleric heal? Yes, the age old cleric question. Should I heal them? And no. Then the other game system I've played is Mech Warrior or BattleTech, I believe it's called.
The RPG version?
Yeah. Well, no, it's the
war game?
It's the war game. I had a whole team. So it was so funny. We went to a yard sale or like a flea market, right? And this homie was selling all of his armies. Like I came out like a bandit. I didn't have to paint anything. I just had a whole team. I was like, yeah,
squad.
Yes, I got my squad. It was the one I wanted. And we did 1v1v1, so it was a 3-man fight. I won.
Let's go.
Beginner's luck, most likely, but I was pretty proud of myself.
No, it's your big brain.
Yeah, my big old brain.
Big old brains.
And then I am getting into Warhammer 40K.
I'm sorry for your wallet.
My poor wallet. Oh my god. The paints, the kits, help. And then there's tanks now, apparently. I'm like,
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
I saw the tanks. I was like, ooh.
I should send you. I have a picture of a great one of the tanks that somebody painted where they put the what's that classic painting where like God is in the clouds like reaching out to like touch.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about.
Somebody painted that mural onto the side of their tank.
Oh my god, that's crazy.
The Warhammer painters go hard. They go hard. Yeah, it's crazy. Or like just the murals that people put on some of the like Titans and stuff is crazy. I love it.
That's so cool. Yeah, no, I have never done mini painting before, so this will be new for me. And I've only done that one BattleTech game, so I don't know much about wargaming in actuality. So super excited to start to learn and to start to play.
There is a Warhammer tabletop game. Yeah.
Yes, that's the one I'm doing. Yeah.
No, I mean not the war game, like RPG.
Oh.
Yeah.
There is?
Yeah.
I'll look into that.
You play Inquisitors or something.
Oh. I would want to be the sisters though.
Sisters of Battle, yeah.
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 Right.
I've played D&D 3, 3.5, 4, 5. I did a one-shot of Pathfinder 2, which I enjoyed, but I don't necessarily know that I'd want to play a full game of it. I have played a little bit of Vampire the Masquerade 5e, which I know is also controversial in the Vampire the Masquerade community. I enjoy it for the type of games that I like to play and run, but I totally understand why fans of V20 are not as big of fans of it. I've played a few little one-shots of Dungeon World, which is a much more lightweight game system that can be run in a variety of ways. I don't think it was Call of Cthulhu, but it was in a Cthulhu verse one-shot. Again, not necessarily the type of universe I would run an entire campaign in. I like the stories in concept. I think there's an interesting distinction between the type of stories you like to consume and the type of stories you want to play in. And those are not always the same thing. I don't really enjoy games where the idea is that you are just constantly going to get worse and devolve and die and go insane. That's not really the type of game I want to play. But it's out there. They're out there for those of you who like those things. And on the tabletop wargaming side of things, I very first got started with Warhammer 40K as well, because that was sort of our post-college thing. Actually, with some of my D&D group members, they started getting into it. I chose Eldar. The elves, I'm not really an elf person normally, but I thought that some of their troops were really interesting looking, and I really like their spaceships a lot more. And so I started with some Eldar. I was awful at painting, truly horrendous, abysmal. So bad. Also, I made some very bad decisions with my color choices. As in very difficult, because I did not realize how difficult certain colors are to paint. So I made some bad decisions there, but that's okay. We lived and we learned. My primary colors were white and purple. Purple's fine. White is not. White is the worst. Don't make white or yellow your primary army colors. I'm begging
Wait, why
you.
yellow?
Because yellow paint is extremely thin pigment and extremely difficult. White is hard both because of the pigment and also because it's very difficult to shade and highlight well. Because in reality, same with
dirty.
black. If you pick black, do not ever use pitch black. It is awful. It looks bad. It has good coverage, but it looks bad. If you want to paint something black, you have to do something kind of like my coat, where like my VTuber model coat is not black. It is a dark gray or a dark navy.
And then you can shade it. Yeah.
And then you shade it, but you don't do black. And the same is true with white, but white is a lot harder to not make it look dirty or beige. So it's really hard to get like true white a lot of the time and make it look good. But also white, yellow, and red are also really hard to paint a consistent layer with, because they'll just look really splotchy until you go over them a ton of times, because they're very like translucent paints. It's very difficult.
Red is hard?
Red can be hard. It is the least hard of those three.
Okay, because the sisters are definitely red.
There are things you can do to help yourself also. Like if you're painting on black, it's going to be a lot harder than painting on white or gray to get that red through there. Yeah, you can see it through the coats of your paint. Yeah, that's exactly. Yeah. Red is harder than some of the other colors, but of the hard colors, it's probably the easiest hard color.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. It's fine. You'll be fine. But I played that for a while. I did not really like the game, as it turns out. I did not enjoy the rules, and I have leaned away a little bit from a lot of tabletop wargaming communities because playing in shops, I think it's probably the same experience that a lot of people have with Magic the Gathering. Playing in shops can be very frustrating, and it's very difficult to get all of your friends to play a war game, which means that if you want to play the game, then you're probably going to be playing strangers in shops. And I have met some great people that way, and I've also met some people that I just were really not fun to interact with. But I switched from Warhammer to War Machine, which is sadly basically defunct / going out of business / maybe is out of business. I know. Funny story, actually. War Machine was originally a offshot mod of Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh.
It originally was a campaign setting with some custom rules called the Iron Kingdoms, where they basically made custom rules for certain types of characters to be able to use their magic to control golems, basically. And those were the warjacks, the robots that are sort of your like kind of your tanks in that game. And anyway, so they have turned it into its own tabletop RPG as well, and war game. And I really like those models. I would say that they're maybe not, a lot of them aren't quite as high of a quality. You can still play the game if you have the rule books. That's true, and people to play with and all of those things. But I really like the models. The quote unquote model quality is maybe not quite as pristine as some of the 40K models. 40K is kind of the industry leader in a lot of that stuff, but I really like the type of models that they have because I don't really like Space Marines all that much. And I liked a lot of the like monsters and stuff that are in War Machine. So I have a lot of War Machine figures, and I ended up getting really into painting them. So I've painted a lot, like literally hundreds of War Machine figures, and have found that I really enjoy the hobby, which is sort of starting to turn into my Gunpla hobby. Yeah, 3D print that stuff. That's true. Yeah, I'm still kind of waiting for a tabletop war game to embrace 3D printing and just like start selling model files instead of like
that would be so convenient.
Right? Yeah, they just have a way lower overhead. They're like, this, like we'll sell you the model files, and our company will have much smaller, basically minimal overhead, and we can just design a bunch of crazy shit.
Well, I didn't know that in 40K the models had different heads. Like you can choose different heads. I was like, I can customize this? That's kind of cool.
So that's a little bit of a double-edged sword, because ostensibly in the rules, if you have them holding certain things, they actually count as rules-wise holding those things, which I understand for immersion. And that's the level of fiddling I don't want to deal with or have to buy more models to make that happen. And you can magnetize them, but that's also kind of a lot of work.
Oh, I'll make the Dark Lord do it. The Dark Knight, he has so many magnets already. You don't understand. Like,
glue to me.
Yeah, just I'll have him do it. It's fine.
It's fine. Don't worry about it.
He said he won't paint my minis for me, but he didn't say anything about magnetizing the head, so I could ask for that.
Listen, honestly, I'm going to recommend, I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I think it's probably not. I'm going to recommend you just get contrast paints. They're going to do a good enough job for a novice painter that, do you know what contrast paints are?
No.
They are a line of paints that Games Workshop puts out that are extremely, extremely thin. And you don't have to thin them down to use them, which helps a lot because that's a really big, maybe not really big, but it's an important part of the learning curve of painting traditionally, is learning exactly how much to thin your paints. Consistently can be very difficult. So if you put them on too thick, it'll look really bad. And if you put them on too thin, you'll have to put on a ton of coats or it'll look bad. So that's really challenging. Contrast paints are basically meant for what you do is, do you know what a zenithal prime is? It's basically a wash paint. Yeah.
Yes, I know what a wash paint is.
So do you know what zenithal priming is?
No.
You know what priming is?
Yes.
Okay, great. So a zenithal prime is basically like you prime it black first, and then you tilt the model, and depending on how crazy you want to get, basically the basic zenithal prime is you prime it black, wait for it to dry, and then from like a 45-degree angle above it, you then prime it again white without like rotating them. And so it will put in like an inbuilt like shading gradient of where the light would hit. So everywhere that's like below that line is either partially white or still black. and then you paint a contrast paint or a wash or an ink over the top of it. And so then the whiter parts are a brighter version of the color and the blacker parts are a darker version of the color. And it's a really, really easy way to get at least a like decently good looking highlight and gradient a lot of the time. Takes a little bit of practice, but not very much. And it will get you very serviceable models, especially when you're doing something like Space Marines that have a lot of like armor plating and stuff like that. It's a lot harder if you're doing things that have a ton of really fiddly little details that you would need to paint a ton of different colors. But yeah.
So low key, the Dark Lord, he actually does do that. So he painted some of our, like, he primed some of our minis, and I was like, why is there black and then white? And I didn't know what it was for, and he hadn't painted them yet, so he just primed them, and I was like, why did you do that? Now I know.
It also helps even if you're using traditional paint, both just for your eye, but also it will still make an effect. But if you paint over enough times with enough layers, then the effect will get lessened. But it's very good for that type of thing. It's also a really easy way to do ghosts. Because you just do like a zenithal prime, and then you just paint like one layer of blue or green over the entire model, and you're just like, yes, it's a really, because basically then like the green, especially if it's a wash or an ink, will pool heavily into the recesses, and the parts that are white, which is a lot of it, will be a really like minty green, a really, really, really light green, and it sort of gives the effect of looking ghostly. So it's like a really easy way to paint sort of ghostly models is to just like just make them one color and do it with a heavy wash over almost entirely white, if not entirely white. Yeah.
That's convenient. That's nice. Good to know.
A lot of painting comes down to just like learning a few basic hacks. There's definitely like an entire tier above me of people that are actually like skilled at painting. But I'm just like good at all of the like base level techniques and hacks that get you like a lot of the way there. I could never do something like the murals or stuff like that, right? and there's like a level of color theory that I also don't have, where people will do like, oh, well, my troll is, you know, has like green skin, right? And then they'll be like, I'm gonna put purple on the fingertips for shading, and I'm like, but he's not purple, and you're like, but it's gonna look really good, and I'm like, damn, you're right, that does look really good, but I couldn't have told you why. Like I never would have made that intuitively. So like, there's people that are really good at painting, but you can get pretty good looking models with you know, some basic techniques and practice.
I think there's like different tiers, right? There's like the oof tier, there's like the table ready, and then there's like the competition. The oof tier.
The oof tier? Is that just unpainted?
Oof. No, it's like painted, but it's real bad. Like I don't think you can even play it. And then there's like the table ready, and then there's like the competition.
Oh, sure. I mean, there's obviously levels in between there, right? A lot of people would say table ready is like, you know, 3 colors. You know, you got 3 colors on it. That's sort of tabletop standard. And, but there's varying levels of like tabletop quality, for sure. I think an interesting sort of fact also, or factoid, is that you do have to be a little bit mindful. Well, once you start getting better, you have to be a little bit mindful if your goal is for the model to be looked at it from table distance or up close, because you don't paint them the same way. Because basically, if it's at table distance, any really, really, really fine, nice details that you make, you literally can't see. Because they're just too far away. And so the models, if a model is painted really good 6 inches away from your face, a lot of the time they'll look flatter on a table because you're not like making an emphatic highlight that doesn't look realistic. But when you stand 6 feet away from it, you're like, oh yeah, like look at all these really big highlight things. So like you do have to kind of learn how you want to be observing your models. And that's also something that's hard for newer painters to learn, because a lot of the time you are trying to paint it to look good from 6 inches away, because that's where you're holding it.
Right in front of my face.
That's right in front of it, yeah. Yeah, most people don't paint them. That's true. That's That's true. Yeah.
Listen, the amount of gray in this household is staggering, okay?
Yeah.
The other thing too, just to touch on real quick about the 3D printing thing,
Mhm.
I think it would be really nice if people would get more on board with that, because for some models you can choose like the special resin, and it's a little bit more robust. Like, so if you drop a model, it won't crack right away. So depending on what kind of resin you choose and like how you care for your minis, like it could really be nice to like have that choice of like what material it's made out of.
Yeah, for sure. But listen, painting wargaming minis will help you also paint tabletop RPG minis.
Listen, he won't help me paint my army. I'm not helping him paint the mobs that are going to kill me.
But you can paint yourself.
That's true.
Yeah.
I do need to paint that model.
You could either like buy a pre-made one, or you could do something like Hero Forge where you can like build a model and then have it sent to you.
Oh yeah. I had one Hero Forge one made from my original campaign, and then we stopped playing. That was terrible.
Womp womp. Also, welcome to the database. Yes, I'm multi-streaming on both Twitch and YouTube. I try to read both chats, but sometimes I miss one or sometimes whatnot. But I do feel like I'm pretty good at reading both. But yeah, that's what all those little Pokemon are at the bottom of the screen. As a side note, on the streaming perspective, the real advantage to streaming on YouTube is that your VODs are all automatically there on your live page, not cluttering up your uploaded videos. So that's nice. But
I think that helps with the algorithm too, because when you have like long form stuff in your video section, it kind of messes up. Like,
that's why people have VODs
time.
channels, is they just they upload VODs and then it just destroys any chance of people finding other videos on that. But they treat live stream past streams as different content than uploaded videos. So yeah, but some people are only on the YouTubes. Yeah, I
was until you made me get a Twitch.
Yeah, you found me through YouTube. Exactly. That's why we do it. That's how we do it. Have you played Vampire the Masquerade, Celine? Going back a little bit. Do you know anything about it?
It sounds good. It sounds fun.
Yeah. Do you know much about it?
No. It sounds like it's about vampires.
It is about vampires. It is in a greater set of systems called World of Darkness, which includes several different systems that all theoretically coexist in the same world. But sort of the idea of Vampire the Masquerade is on a role-playing side, it's one of those systems where monsters all coexist in the world of humanity in the present day, like it is the real world. Okay. And the idea is the mortals do not know about it, or at least the vast majority of them do, but like the CIA knows. For example, the Vatican knows. And so, but the thing is, like, yeah, we're vampires, we're werewolves, we are way stronger than people. But we're numbering in the thousands, and they are numbering in the billions, and we literally we aren't able to be awake during the day, let alone go outside during the day. And so, like, a couple billion humans with blowtorches are like an extinction level event for us. So even though individually, we're more powerful, we must maintain the masquerade, as in pretending to be members of human society and not getting caught. And so that's like on the role-playing side is like, well, a lot of these vampires are in very high up positions of power and influence over the years and lead very intricate lives maintaining their power and their nexuses of politics and whatnot. But on like a mechanical side, there are a bunch of different clans, and every clan is kind of a version of different depictions of vampires through different kinds of media. So basically every kind of vampire you can think of is basically the prototype of one of the clans. And so they're all descended from one common vampire, but they sort of went off into their different clans. So there's the like vampires that are
Dracula.
monstrous and not hot vampires, like the monster vampires. There's the type that are like the sexy, suave, seductive vampires. There's the vampires that are in tune with animals and control swarms of bats and things like that. There's vampires that are basically just like humans, but they're really, really fast, really aggressive, really like, just very sort of your traditional, like scary,
Super
but
strong.
still human seeming vampires. There's like the vampires that can control the minds of mortals, by just telling them things. And so that's sort of how
the droids that you are looking for.
Exactly. Yeah. And so that's sort of how that's sort of your class system. Your class is your clan, basically. And the idea is sort of like, it's a very hierarchical world because vampires from earlier generations are literally stronger. Like the bloodline is diluting every generation of vampires that gets made. And so like just by being born, you are already the bottom of the totem pole, both because you have no experience, you have no resources built up, but also you are just physically like weaker than them. And you have like a lower cap than they do. Like your ceiling is lower than your ancestors. And so it's like a system of corruption and politics, and like it's one of those like, listen, I may hate your guts, but also we're gonna live thousands of years, so like we're gonna have to find a way to still piss each other off without like fully going to war most of the time. So there's a lot of like intrigue and stuff built into the setting rather than the mechanics. I mean, the mechanics also, but yeah.
That's cool. I feel like I'd really enjoy that.
I think you would too. Yeah. With the way that you talk about being like an RP player, I think you would really enjoy it conceptually.
Yes, I think I would.
There's actually really good live play of it. I think live play is what it's called, or actual play, I guess you would call it, maybe. Essentially what Dimension 20 and Critical Role are for D&D. There was a really good one called LA by Night, put on by Geek and Sundry.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. Well, Geek and Sundry used to be where Critical Role started.
Oh,
yeah.
That's why it sounded familiar. I was like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. So yeah, listen, if you're looking to have some really fun vampire tabletop RP to watch, and they get like really into it, it'd be a good place to check out some of that.
What was it called again?
LA by Night. Yes.
I will look.
Yes.
For sure.
Mm-hmm. Do you watch any actual plays?
I did watch Critical Role campaign 2, was it?
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't in it for campaign 1. The Dark Lord was Dark Knight. He was watching campaign 1, and then he got me into campaign 2. We love the show. The show is so fun.
The show is very well made.
Yes, very well made, very fun. And then to hear the voices is so cool. It's so nice. To have like them be the voice actors too. I think that's just very neat, since that is where they come from. But and then after that, I had some stuff come up, so I haven't really been able to ingest much of anything media wise.
Yeah. Campaign 2 was where I jumped on the Critical Role train. Like I think I watched I think I saw some clips of the end of campaign 1 on the lead up to campaign 2, and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. Maybe I will check it out. And then I just started with campaign 2, really enjoyed it for the most part. Went back and watched campaign 1 because this was peak COVID. This was peak COVID time. So, and then I watched some of campaign 3, but it didn't hit quite as good for me. So I ended up dropping it. But I did actually start falling in love with Dimension 20. After actually Brendan Lee Mulligan did the Calamity one shot for Critical Role, which I would highly recommend watching because it is fantastic DMing and RPing. And it's it's a one-off, right? So it's like 4 episodes, and it's really good, really, really good, really intense. He literally told the players you can have any magic items you want. Full stop. build the craziest shit you can, because it's like, you do know the end of this is the fucking apocalypse. Like, everything is going to be ruined. It doesn't matter. Do whatever you want. And like, it was, you're like, oh, our paladin has 28 strength and 20 charisma and a flying griffin mount and like whatever. And then somebody else is like, oh, that's crazy. What about but have you heard of all of my like time powers and like it just all sorts of wild shit. Yeah. And Brendan Lee Mulligan is a master storyteller.
I will definitely look at that one, because that one sounds really good too.
Yeah, very accessible.
Yeah, nice four episode.
Yeah, you don't really need to know anything about the world, like that it's gonna be bad. It's called Calamity. I actually think that that's something that have you watched any Brendan Lee Mulligan stuff? Okay. So he is very funny, but he's also a very good DM, and specifically because of the way that their campaigns are structured. Dimension 20 always has a set number of episodes for the series, like for the whole thing, because of sort of like production aspects, because they aren't only a D&D like network. And so they're like, okay, we're going to make a 12 or 20 episode series. And because of that, there's a lot more work that Brennan and the players do at the front of the campaign before they start. Talking about those things that you and I talked about earlier, about what you want to do, and they really flesh out their characters a lot more than, say, Critical Role does. Because they know they have such a limited amount of time. And because of that, the story just hits so hard, and they don't get crazy sidetracked. Because they know that they just have a very limited amount of time to do it. And so the stories end up like popping really hard. Also, hi Ragers. I'll say hi in just a sec. The stories pop really hard because there's a lot more forced structure. And that isn't necessarily better than what Critical Role does, because Critical Role is really mimicking a home campaign on steroids. And home campaigns don't have a 10 or 20 episode limit. And so there's pros and cons to that. Like you get a more organic, maybe story out of that. But sometimes that focused story from a Dimension 20 season just hits so hard. You don't have those episodes where you're like, yeah, so we're shopping for 4 hours. You know what I mean? That kind of like kind of drag sometimes. Also, welcome in Raiders. Welcome in Carbon. You were playing Just Chatting. How are you doing? I'm Grybach, digital vampire, elder gamer, boomer tuber, RPG enthusiast, and I'm here with my good friend Celine.
Hello.
She is pinned in the top. Please make sure to check her out as well. And we are starting a low-key tabletop RPG and D&D and wargaming podcast that we will do and then edit into YouTube videos. And Raid and Run, absolutely. Thank you so much for trusting me with your community. And make sure that you get some good rest, food, drinkies, bathroom stops, what have you. Yeah, so we're just talking about all sorts of random crap.
Yes.
Yes.
The yapathon.
Yep. Yappity sacks.
Ironically, I think we're nearing the end of the yap.
Well, we're nearing the end of what our notes said. We have plenty of things we could talk about.
True. I guess. What was it? The vampire one that you said that you were going to do, or was there another gaming system that you were trying out that one time? Do you remember?
That's so specific.
I know. My memory.
That one
so
time
bad.
when?
Was it last year? I forget. There was you guys were gonna try a new system. Was it
like my gaming group?
Yeah.
Probably.
It's been so long.
Probably wasn't vampire. I mean, that may have been when we did our one shot of Pathfinder. So, but our DM likes to do a lot of like homebrew stuff too. So I don't think it was probably a new system that we were talking about for that type of thing, but
Gotcha.
we do tend to do. Oh, maybe Daggerheart. Oh, I bet it was Daggerheart. I bet that's exactly right. Yes, thank you.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah. That's probably exactly what it was. It went.
I didn't get to follow up.
It went about how I expected, which is to say that I think it had some good ideas, but I think it runs into some of the same challenges that. I think it runs into some of the same challenges that 4th edition had of feeling in some ways a little bit too gamified.
Okay.
Which is a really difficult quality to put your finger on for a tabletop RPG because it is a game, and some people are fine with games that don't have any like tactical elements in them, and those are very different kinds of games and stories. But I do like having tactical combat and like sound rules for that type of thing. So I want a certain amount of it, but it's hard to explain exactly when something feels a little bit too gamey and a little bit less like a world. I don't know. It's a weird space to be in, and so it was a fun one shot. I don't know that I would want to play it for a very long period of time. You know?
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I was just curious because I remember that conversation. I was like, I never did follow up on what happened with that.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you, what are your feelings on games that have what I would call actual narrative-based mechanics? As in mechanics that are more about the concept of a scene or an encounter or a story beat, rather than like only things that are like a skill check or an attack or a spell. Do you know what I mean when I say that?
No, I think I do, but I'm not 100% sure. So like, I guess, is it like having something happen, or the character does something, or the world does something that's like narrative based versus just like rules as written, I guess?
No, it's more like when there are rules to adjudicate more nebulous concepts than a direct character ability. So things that might include scores of like political influence mechanics. Thank you for joining the database. Welcome in, Kate Caddy. How are you doing this evening? Just subscribed at tier 1. Holy smokes. Hello. Welcome in. I hope you enjoy your stay here. We like to keep things pretty chill, pretty down to earth, pretty fun. And we're talking about the TTRPGs. So things like maybe mechanics that define maybe relationships, right? Like that's not something that has a concept in D&D, is like your relationship mechanics with somebody. Or things like the comment September. It is true. It is September. Thank you so much. Plus you get all my fun emotes, at least for this month. There are games that have an idea of a like you can just declare essentially that your party is retreating, or like a mechanic maybe that your character can sacrifice themselves to accomplish a narrative end. That is something that you would see play out in like a movie or a book or something like that. Like your heroic. So maybe Gandalf falling, like stopping the Balrog, but falling into the pit of Khazad-dûm could be represented as a mechanic where you can sacrifice yourself in order to accomplish a narrative end or a narrative escape for your party or things like that. So there's systems that have actual rules for things that are those sort of nebulous storytelling concepts. In addition to like character rules, of course. But like, do you like those kinds of things, or indifferent, or haven't really thought about them or read about them, or?
So I think the closest thing I can relate to that is in the campaign that lasted for 4 years. So it was a homebrew campaign. And in that campaign, there were things called Fallius treasures. Now, they were not like, they're magical items that was made by the GM, and they had specific things that they would do. And so one of the items was this apple, and the character that used it, the apple wasn't made for the character's lore, but the character used it as a means to achieve something that was character story related. And it was a sacrifice that had to be made. And it was low key also like the character, it was pretty much like the apple was a wish spell, and he made a wish to pretty much take out the evil that was within him, but that would have caused his character to pretty much die. So it was kind of like a Dark Link combat scenario that ended up happening. And so I thought it was very organic the way that my GM kind of implemented it for that campaign specifically. So I do enjoy when it makes sense. Like for me, it's all about the plot. So if it enriches the world, I enjoy it. If it was like kind of railroady though, or like sandboxy where it kind of forces you into a scenario that like there's no way out, like the players have no agency and they can't do anything, I don't really like that. So I think I enjoy having those kinds of things where the bigger narrative is affected by certain things that also affect the characters. There was one time I kind of pulled the GM wife card. I was kind of salty at one of the players at the table because they kept using my character as a scapegoat. So I was kind of bored with the character at the time. I needed a hiatus. So I asked my GM to kill off my character. So he used it as a plot point for the big bad that was related to the person who kept using my character as a scapegoat, to take responsibility for their bad actions. So I got killed by the big bad that they were secretly feeding power to, because they were like, oh, I'm just cleaning up these souls for this bard because she hates dirty things. But they were actually stealing souls of the dead to give to this evil Dark Knight. And he came out and killed me. So it kind of was nice to be able to have those kind of big world things so that I could thematically actually like change characters without it being like, oh, my character just leaves and it's no consequence to the world and it's just like, she'll be back. It was kind of like, oh, we don't know if she'll be back. And then there was a point where she may not have come back, and that wish spell with that other character that I was talking about, it was 3 wishes, so he used one of them to bring back my character, and I didn't plan that with him. Like, he chose to do that on his own, which was really cool, and that was something that I didn't anticipate, and it really changed the course of the events that happened in the game, because he could have used 3 wishes on himself, but he didn't, which was nice because he actually played like for the table. So that was really, I think it was organic, and I like that. I don't know. It's fun to me, and I like big world stuff, kind of affecting the characters and having like meaningful and mindful things that happen.
Very demure.
Very mindful, very demure, very like best friends forever.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds fantastic. That's not exactly the type of thing I was like really had in mind. It's again, I would say that it's not really something that's in any of the systems that you have played, and it's very it's much less present in the games that I have played also. I would say that like some of them have some elements of that, but not as strongly as other ones. Like emergent storytelling and consequences and things like that, I think are a mark of a really good table and a really good group. So that's really, really good that you have that. And yeah, like D&D does not, I guess I should say, like D&D does not have this concept at all.
Okay.
But Daggerheart does, sort of, in that they have a like last stand mechanic. When your character is dying, you can basically like take a chance, and if it goes badly, you just die, and if it doesn't, then you're back at it. But you can also choose to die without you can either take the chance, or you can basically choose to go out in a blaze of glory if you would be dying. And then there is sort of a narrative impact and resolution to the situation that you are currently in, because there is a mechanic that is like, so the specifics of its effect are very much up to the DM and the players, but there are specific rules for moving the narrative forward.
Oh,
like that. And so some games play with that more than others, and especially a lot of games that tend to have less tactical combat rules tend to have, some of them have more of those kinds of things, because a lot of well, not a lot, but some games actually very much directly call into the idea of it working in many ways like a play. So they'll actually talk about scenes and things like that, as opposed to just like a world and locations. They will describe it as though it is a movie or a play that you are making together. And so then there will sometimes be mechanics about, in a scene, this is like how, like, things that can happen or things you can do sort of generically, because that's sort of the framework that we're putting the greater system into. I think it's a really interesting concept. Fun. It's an interesting concept. I can see it going, maybe not like stiflingly, but I do think it's something you have to be really careful with, because anything that's taking the players out of it is, in some ways, it can kind of lower the immersion, because you're literally thinking about the meta of the story.
Yeah.
But in some ways, it can also be really satisfying, because some of those complaints that we might have in D&D of like, well, that's really unsatisfying way to like, go out like a bitch or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You know, so like, I think it's an interesting topic that I haven't necessarily delved deeply enough on enough systems to have a strong opinion about, but I was just curious if you had read very many systems that had those kinds of mechanics in them.
No, but I think I kind of understand. So like, so my GMs are very like, I don't know, they're very extra. So like they will have things where you can kind of describe what's happening. Like I know like a big thing with Critical Role is like how you want to do it when like you kill something, right?
Sure.
That's why it's not like kind of a static, oh, you just killed it. I feel like for like role-playing purposes, like if you're given the opportunity to make that choice organically, that'd be kind of cool. I do know like maybe having a mechanic in a game can help certain people, because I know there's this one player on my table currently, like he has problems like role-playing, and he kind of is stuck on the meta of, oh, I need to have the scene move on, so I don't want to ask any more questions, and I'm gonna push my player, like my table, along to keep the story going. So it can kind of help temper those players, I think, into giving them like a structure.
Yeah, like pushing them to like both aiding them in the way that they look at it, but and like understand the confines, but also in a way potentially push them to interact in a way that is like more into it based on those things.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of system would actually help this player out a lot.
Those are the types of things that you can you can absolutely homebrew certain things like that. Like Critical Role, I'm going to keep this as spoiler free as possible for campaign 3. But one of the characters dies.
Oh gosh.
And they very much feel like they took inspiration from Daggerheart, because they made Daggerheart. Critical Role created Daggerheart. And so they are the ones with that last stand mechanic. And they did not describe it as like, I'm going to use my last stand. But it was very much like okay, I want to make a sacrifice to like, which makes it would make perfect sense in a movie or in an anime or in a manga. in the situation that they were in to make the sacrifice that they did. And basically it's like you understand there's probably no coming back from this, right? And they're like, yep, I understand. And like basically it worked. Like it basically got to work without having to have had specific rules for what would happen in this scenario. Because I think that sometimes games that have like overly complex rules for conflict resolution get to a point where it actually starts becoming absurd in the other direction, where you're like, that doesn't like, one of the things we found was that in D20 Modern, I forgot that I've played that too. D20 Modern has like rules for object penetration for like, you know, like damaging, you know, wood and stuff like that, because there's guns, like, you know, it's a modern world. So there's guns, there's cars, there's weapon, you know, and so there's rules for like how much this substance will stop. But by the same token, there are anti-material rifles that can shoot through tanks. But like, because of the way that the rules are written, like a 1-inch thick piece of plywood would like be destroyed, but it would still stop the bullet. And so you're like, I see. So the greatest weapon or the greatest shield you can make is 20 pieces of plywood. You know what I mean? And you're like,
that just takes you out of it completely.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's the challenge, is because it's like, well, those are the rules. Like, so when are we ignoring the rules and when are we using the rules? And so something like a narrative mechanic, like an actual narrative rule that's talking about the story impact rather than the like how the dice work, you know, it can facilitate those situations where it just makes more sense. And yeah, so I think I think that it's a really interesting idea, and you don't even need to necessarily like hard code it, because that is something that a lot of the time when we say that a DM does rule of cool, like a lot of the time that is kind of what they're doing. They're low key being like, this makes a good story and a good visual, and it's not so crazy that I won't allow it, you know, and so we're going to sort of allow it to push the narrative in this direction because it's interesting. And sure, maybe technically, mechanically, you would have needed more actions to do that or whatever, some dumb crap, right? But that's not, you know.
Yeah, no, I think like the rule of cool is kind of fun too, because we recently had this really hilarious situation where our Leonin, he was falling off. We're in the Underdark right now, and he got tentacled and he got grappled up to the ceiling, and he was falling. Yeah, it was crazy. There's a lot going on down there.
Oh, woo, Monster Sama, tentacle me harder.
Yes,
sorry, I've got to behave.
Yes. Big buff Leonin getting all tentacled. And so he fell, and as he's falling, he looks at the GM. He's like, can I use my action to become like using centrifugal force to bounce myself off of the wall and change the trajectory of my velocity so that I land and not crash into the ground? And my GM's like, okay, you know what? That sounds cool. Why don't you roll for it and let's just see? And he succeeded with a nat 20, and we're just like, what is happening? He literally Beyblade off the wall and survived the fall because he was low health. Like, he probably would have like splat if he actually fell. And we were just all dying. We're like, how does this even happen? Like, how does this man come up with these things? And mind you, he's a barbarian, and he bless him. He
bless his heart.
Bless his heart, but he kind of, you know, plays the part and is also the part IRL. So, like, for him to come up with this was
powerful himbo
hilarious.
energy. Yeah.
Yes, it was so funny. And the GM let it go because he thought of it himself and you know, rolled the dice, and it worked in his favor. And it's just like things like that are kind of nice to allow to happen, because it mechanically that doesn't exist. Like,
yeah, mechanically that doesn't work or whatever.
Yeah, you can't turn into a Beyblade and just avert physics altogether, you know.
Yeah,
but it was funny, and it's nice.
And I think there is sometimes a danger with that type of thing in D&D of like, as a group, you need to figure out how you want to play, because sometimes you might come up with something that's really cool and the DM allows it, but then if you try and replicate it all the time, then it becomes a problem.
Yeah.
But like at the same time, then it's also sort of awkward if you're like, well, it worked that one time, why wouldn't it work here? So like there can be some challenges with that too. And so Yeah.
Yeah, he's well aware of that. So like what he does is he's like, this is it. Like I just let you have it one time. Don't be trying this again, you know? And then if you do this, like if you keep trying to exploit it, just understand that I can use it against you too.
Oh,
so,
sure.
Like
That's
if
the
you're
classic.
gonna play, if you're gonna play nonsense, if we're gonna play stupid games, we're gonna win stupid prizes. So
Yeah.
and I think that's fair.
I'm trying to think what the coolest rule of cool that's ever happened was for me. And I'm having a hard time thinking like of a specific example.
Oh my god, there was this one time we were fighting I think it was like a younger dragon. It wasn't an adult dragon. And we had gotten it was gladiator style, and we were captured, so we don't have our stuff. So we could only use the simple things that we had. And our I think he was a rogue or a swashbuckler or something. He picked up the sling and he's like, I do a called, because this was 3.5. And he said, I do a called shot to the eye.
Classic.
And these were those cursed, like smoky dice with the red like lettering. Okay, so these are the cursed dice. This rogue is doing a called shot, and he gets it. He crits it. And it was so crazy to the point that GM was like, well, the dragon dies. Like, there's nothing to do. If it goes through the eye, goes through the head, and you crit, it's like, it's dead. So he let that happen, but unfortunately, he also made the dragon fall on top of our sorcerer. So we had to dig her out of the dragon corpse. That was fun.
I know one time we like held a dragon's like claw / arm like through a portal that was closing and cut it off. That was pretty cool. Stayed cut off.
So, oh god.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little hard to identify because our GM is really good at making like interesting situations and interesting scenarios and interesting magic items and things like that. I know I've talked before on the channel and probably talked to you about it, but one of the things that he really enjoys doing is like making funky magic items that are like a regular magic item, but has some issue. Or some spice, right? So like one of them was gloves of mage hand that, you know, they're gloves, they let you cast mage hand. And when you do that, your hands detach from your body and float as the mage hand. So you don't have your hands and a mage hand, you have detachable hands.
That's
which is
crazy.
Like pretty cool. It's fun, yeah.
Very
or
cool.
We got like an immovable rod at like level 3, except it's a quote unquote immovable rod, and so you know how the regular immovable rod works, right?
I think so. Yeah.
It's just like it's a rod, and then when you activate it, it's got a little button on it. It will lock in place no matter what its orientation or altitude is, and it will not move whatsoever. So if it's in the air, it will just stay hovering in the air and you can't move it. And so you can climb on it. You can do all sorts of creative things with it. You can use it to bar doors, etc. Ours, you just activated it and it basically made itself weigh 1,000 pounds and then dropped straight down to the ground and then was, quote, immovable. Not exactly immovable, but very difficult. So we use that with pulleys a lot to like tie it onto things and then drop it over something and make it weigh 1,000 pounds.
Yeah, that's smart.
You know,
that's fun. That's so much fun though. Like that's fun. I love that.
We found like a you know the Fantasia scene where all the tools are, you know, operating themselves. We found one that was like that, but they were all like dangerous. So like the drapes tried to strangle you. There was like an enchanted oven that like spat out a calzone golem. That like every time you pierced it with a piercing weapon, it like sprayed molten cheese on you and like burned you. And the magic item we got out of it was like a hat, a chef's hat that whenever somebody cooked something while wearing it, everybody thought it tasted incredible, regardless of how well it actually tasted. Like, so it was an enchantment based hat that was like, well, everybody thinks it tastes great. And I'm like, when? But also the first, basically, whenever somebody would eat something made with it, you rolled like a D10 for basically a wild magic effect.
Oh my god.
But it was a specific list, and so some of them were helpful, like, you know, +5 movement speed for a round, +1 AC. One of them was you are petrified for a round. One of them turns you into a sheep. One of them turns you into a gaseous form. One of them, anyway, a bunch of random stuff. And so we started just like brewing a pot of tea every morning to like fill up potion bottles of like something random happens. And the number of times we just got desperate and just swigged a wild magic potion to just like YOLO what the effect was. And it like serendipitously worked really well was actually pretty pretty fun. So those aren't really
so
rule of cool
good.
because those actually had rules, but so it's kind of hard for me to think of one off the top of my head because
that's still them, like that's your GM.
He was very creative, right?
Like,
He was so creative that it didn't feel
creative.
like rule of cool. It just felt like cool rules.
Yeah, no. One recent thing that happened that the GM allowed to happen, so that we have an alligator or a lizard man, pretty much, right? And he's a bard, and his name is Cromnom.
Cromnom.
And he's very silly, and as a silly character, he's the bard that like can enchant like items. So like he does the Mickey Mouse thing where he made this desk levitate, and he's using this desk as like a flying like vehicle pretty much. And our ranger was stuck on like a high ground and she couldn't get out, and we were like fleeing. So he's like, can she sit on the desk drawer if I open the desk drawer out? And she kind of like is like on like, you know, like the motorcycles with a little side cart.
Yeah.
On this, she kind of became like a side cart for her to sit in, and they were flying down the street and she was shooting arrows at the pursuers as we were running away, and it just was the funniest thing ever. We're like, what is happening right now? Like, what is going on? It was just so silly, and he let it happen because
you just reminded me of probably a rule of cool / rule of really stupid, which was our final D&D 3.5 sort of one shot that we did before like moving on. We played like an ECL 19 game, so effective character level 19. Basically no holds barred. We could do whatever we wanted. So we made the most crazy, like cracked characters that we could in all of our favorite directions. So one of our players basically made somebody that had a higher AC than any of the gods and took a bunch of like levels of divine classes. So he was like practically immortal, practically invincible, yada, yada, yada. I was a Thrycreen. Do you know what a Thrycreen is?
No.
A Thrycreen is a bug man mantis person that has 4 arms and can quad wield.
Oh my god!
So I was a quad wielding soul knife bug man that had 4. I don't remember what the weapon type was, but it was a weapon type that basically ignored AC because it was kind of like a lightsaber. And so I could make 32 attacks in a round.
God.
And then I think I had something that like doubled that once in a while. So then I did like 64 attacks sometimes. One of our characters could just like shoot 1 billion arrows per round with a bunch of crazy bullshit magic arrow archery stuff. And so the whole thing was like meant to be ridiculous. So we were like storming the planes on like on a intergalactic interdimensional spaceship. And, we bought a bunch of ring gates. You know what ring gates are?
No.
It's basically like just a small portal that's only maybe like 6 to 8 inches across that like they're paired. And so when you reach through one, it just comes out the other side. And so we just strapped a bunch of ring gates to our character that had higher AC than any god. And then basically Voltroned all of our body parts like out of them. So I had my like 4 arms coming out from like his torso from ring gates, and then our archer was shooting arrows out of the shield and sticking its head up through a ring gate on top of the helmet so that he could like see. And then like I think we had a minotaur that had like, I don't know, some stupid amount of strength. and like we like put like ring gates on the shoes so that they could be in charge of running. And so we basically just ran around on a mecha cleric semi-deity with like 5 characters that all had a billion attacks, and we just became a whirlwind of death, and it was so stupid. But it was very funny. It was perfect for a one-shot.
So great.
It was perfect for a one-shot. Yeah.
Oh my god, that's great. I love that.
Yeah, probably should not have been allowed, but it was a one-shot, so who cares, right?
Listen, I can see it in my mind's eye. It's so good.
So stupid. Oh, I remember a different friend had a campaign where they like fought vampires and then staked them and turned them to ash. But like part of the, I guess, established lore in that game was like if any blood was given to like poured on the ashes, like they could start healing and regrowing back into vampires. So they weren't like truly dead. And so they were like, okay, so what if I took those ashes and condensed the carbon so hard that it became a diamond? And then they were like, okay, go on. And then they're like, then I affixed those diamonds to arrowheads. And so then they shot vampire diamonds into people, which then caused a vampire to explode out of the person as they reformed from their compressed diamond body. I'm like, that is so stupid. I love it.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Yeah, some people are out here wild and real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine.
Imagine a world.
Yeah, imagine a world where vampires be busting out of your chest like the alien. Oh god. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Right.
What are your, I guess you normally play like homebrew settings and stuff. Do you have much knowledge of D&D settings? Like official ones? Oh, really?
No.
Like basically none at all?
No, because I've played every single campaign I've played has been in a homebrew setting, ironically.
Oh, well, there you go. All right. Yeah. Fair enough.
Yep. One was in this beautiful capital of Rosemead. Very fun, nostalgic. And then the other one is actually set in, I don't know if you know the Mabinogion. It's like a Welsh pantheon.
I do not.
It's like Morgan and the Bab, the 3 sisters. So there's like Morgan, Maka, and I can't pronounce the other one's name. She's the goddess of light. I think it's like Nimhan or something. It's spelled all Welsh Welsh is crazy.
Welsh is crazy, yo.
Welsh is crazy, yo.
Facts. It's a fantasy language.
And no, it's really it's also based loosely off of the MMORPG Mabinogi. Very old game.
Can't say I've ever heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very old MMORPG. And so that pantheon and that world is just completely separate from the D&D lore at all. I think the only D&D kind of like lore that I semi know is like the dragon lore. So like loose stuff about like Tiamat is about it. Sure.
Some of the standard, of course, like monsters and stuff that sort of transcend settings.
Yep.
Yeah.
My favorite one is the what's his name? Is it they always pronounce it wrong on purpose whenever we talk about, I think it's called like the Tarrasque.
Oh, the Tarrasque?
Yeah.
Or the Tarrasque. Honestly, I don't know how it's pronounced. Yeah. I've always said Tarrasque.
Yeah, they call it the Tarrasque.
I mean,
so I don't know.
Hard to say.
It's the same thing. Yeah.
It's like Terrasque. Like it's a weird spelling.
The joke is they call it the Tarrasque.
The Tarrasque? Okay, well that's definitely wrong. Yeah. Terras, yeah.
Yes. That's my favorite big monster. Beak.
Have I ever told you about the zombie cactus?
No. Please.
So it's from a setting called Dark Sun.
Okay.
And in Dark Sun, arcane magic is powered by drawing the life force out of the surrounding environment. And so wizards do be wizards and basically they've Mad Maxed the entire world in their wizard wars. So the whole world is like desolate deserts, awful. It's also where psionics were first introduced into D&D. Under the idea of like, these are not arcane magic. This is like a latent psionic ability that developed in people that grew up in this harsh environment. In the original edition, you basically had to start at level 3 because it was basically deemed impossible to live as a level 1 character.
Oh my god.
And so in this hellscape that is Dark Sun, also Dark Sun is so bad that the gods left.
Oh.
They didn't die. They just said, nah.
Bye.
They just left. They're like, nah, I'm out, dog.
Crazy.
But so the zombie cactus is a cactus that appears, well, it appears normal for a Dark Sun cactus anyway. But it is sentient and psionic. And if you attempt to drink its like liquid, because that's like a primary thing that you use for hydration in the desert, is like cactuses have a lot of liquid in them. It basically hits you with a psychotropic drug and then mind controls you and turns you into a thrall. So you become a zombie for the cactus. The cactus is not a zombie. The cactus is a psionic monster that makes zombies out of people passing by.
That's so interesting. Oh my god.
It's such a funny concept. Dark Sun is one of those worlds that is fascinating to like tell stories about, but at a certain point also is so miserable to exist in that like I don't know that I'd want to do a full campaign there. But it's really it's an interesting world. It's very inspired by Conan the Barbarian actually in a lot of the like imagery. There's like giant bugs and giant like I think that's actually where Thrycreen came from originally. Is like Dark Sun.
That sounds like fun though. Like if you were a little bit higher level, just to like experience the world.
Or if you really wanted to do one of those like dark political campaigns that like, you know, you're like, listen, everything sucks. Sorry. Like, because there are clerics, they just don't have gods. They like worship elemental beings basically.
Oh,
because the gods are gone. They're like, nah.
Yeah, no.
Nah, we out.
I think we tried something similar to that, but the table wasn't right for it. So
it's definitely not for everyone. Yeah.
Because it wasn't like that specifically, but it was a concept where like there was inquisitors and like magic was heavily policed because the magic is running out in the world and we don't know why. And unfortunately, it was one of those scenarios where it's like you can't save everybody, but one of the people that was on the table was just like, I want to save this town. I'm like, we can't save every town we pass or we're not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. I've known several people that really wanted the idea of DMing a world where there was basically no magic. And I'm like, why is that? Why are you playing D&D then? Like,
yeah, you could play something like Cyberpunk or some other game that has no magic in it.
Yeah,
because
like,
I think
I mean that's like to each their own, right? But magic, to me, right? I'm like, you're just saying everybody has to play one of like 4 classes. Like I don't. That doesn't sound fun to me.
No. Yeah, I play D&D to get out of here. I don't want to be here.
Have you ever played Shadowrun? I didn't see that on your list.
So I think what happened was it was a Shadowrun setting using the Cyberpunk Red rules.
Oh,
because we were too stupid to figure out the
Shadowrun feels like a lot. Like I don't think I actually want to play it, but the world is fun. That's another part of collecting RPGs is like sometimes you just want to see the like universe that they've created, but sometimes the mechanics are some tabletop RPG mechanics. I feel the same way as I do about tabletop board game mechanics, where sometimes I'm like, I think that you're more in love with rules than actually playing this game. Like,
no, so it took us, I kid you not, like 5 hours to make characters. And I still didn't know how to use my character because I specifically wanted to use magic. I was an elf and I had no idea how to use magic.
I do like that Shadowrun is based around where I live. Like, I find that very funny. It's like, what if the apocalypse happened and we like walled off a part of your state with radioactive waste? I'm like, that's kind of funny, actually.
You're like, great.
I could see it.
One cool thing in I don't know if it's Shadowrun or if it was the Cyberpunk, Because I don't know, is there hacking in Shadowrun?
Oh yeah, I'm pretty sure. I think Shadowrun is one of those games that has like 3 planes of existence simultaneously. There's like the cyber world and the physical world and then like magic world or something like that.
The Fae or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I looked at the rule book. I literally was cross-eyed, and I only looked at my portion of the rule book. I wasn't even looking at the other parts. I didn't even have a gun because like I'm pretty sure like you could have like weapons.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, I didn't even have a gun because I couldn't figure out the rules.
Yeah.
Oh, it was crazy. That ended up being like a one-off because, like I said, we could not figure out the rules, and then we tried to bring it back using Cyberpunk Red when it came out, and then it just became a Cyberpunk Red game instead.
Yeah, that sounds accurate. Yeah. Oh, I was gonna say when I was talking about Vampire the Masquerade, I was actually playing. There is a Vampire the Masquerade video game. There's actually several. So I was playing that on stream a couple months ago.
I have to look.
Which may have been part of like it's an old game. It came out right when the Source engine was coming out, so like the early 2000s. But it's a cult classic because the writing is fantastic in it. It's very funny. But also, Vampire is cool in that the setting is the modern world, which means that there is a bunch of lore that you can pull up for things that have happened in the supernatural society, but it very much encourages you to actually take your local area and like underground politicsify it and like take areas that you know that people go to and hang out in, and you're like, okay, so how am I going to integrate like a dark underbelly of, you know, magical corruption into it and things like that. And I think it's a really cool facet that doesn't really exist in most other RPGs, being in fantasy worlds, that you can take something familiar and you can actually integrate things like Google Maps into your game, because you can make like a custom Google map and you can be like, yeah, so, you know, this is Google Maps, but I've also marked off like, these are the territories controlled by the Camarilla, and like, this is where, you know, yada yada is, and like, these is where these bars are, and, you know, like, you can do all sorts of fun things like that. I think that that's a fun element that is normally kind of hard for a GM to fully flesh out their world, because it's a lot of work to just make a world in general whole cloth, and then it's like even more to like make it highly detailed, especially when players just decide to go wherever they want. You know what I mean? Oh my
god. Yeah. We have had so many issues with that. Like, granted, like the level of improv that my GM has is commendable. Because commendable, I think that's the word.
It is.
Oh my god, there was one time where we had to pivot so hard because they were like, oh, well, I'm gonna go on the ship, bye guys, and he didn't explain anything to us, and we're just like, is this a character change? Like, we as a table don't understand what's happening. He's like, oh no, my character is just going.
That's when communication would help a lot.
Yeah, we're like, oh, okay.
Oh,
so
I guess it's a pirate campaign now.
Yeah, we're like, we're coming with you, and he's like, oh, you're coming with us? Like, I didn't think you'd actually want to come. It's like, we don't want to lose you. Like, so as you know, the table, we were just like pivoted, and the GM's like, I didn't have ships ready, I didn't have anything ready, but Theater of the Mind, and we're setting sail.
Oh, that's a good question. Do you guys normally play Theater of the Mind, Battle Mat / you know, like online tabletop, or a hybrid?
Hybrid. So yeah, our main campaign, we do it in person. And dude, the 3D printer is like, it goes on every day. Like, he's just 3D printing stuff every day. I was like, what are you making now? Like, and the box is see-through, so I can see what's inside. So I'm like, what is that? What is that? And then I felt so bad. So like, there was one instance where we were supposed to go to a harbor. We didn't go. There are 3 ships sitting right behind me right now, and we didn't use any of them.
Womp womp.
Yeah. So we'll probably use them at a different time, but The side campaigns that we do, though, we do it online. We use the system called Foundry.
Yeah. We actually use Foundry also.
Yeah, it's really convenient, and I like the layout kind of is reminiscent of video games. So it's kind of easy for people that aren't used to like doing online tabletop to like get into it. And the bookkeeping is really nice and convenient as well. I know my GM does a lot of mods, so like he'll do like spell effects and stuff like that. And sound effects sometimes too that jump scare me.
Our GM in-loaded all of the icons for all of the Guild Wars skills so that we could use them for custom icons. So because good. A lot of like several of our players played Guild Wars. That was inspired move.
I love that.
Yeah.
So we normally do table theater of the mind when it's like more like RP stuff, and then like if it's combat stuff, we'll have our representation out on the table. And then if we have the online games, we use Foundry. So we do everything.
All of the above. Yeah.
All of the above.
Yeah. I think we do sort of a similar. I for one really don't like theater of the mind for combat unless it's a really, really, really small short combat that's like meant to be more of a narrative combat than a real combat. I just think it doesn't work very well. And yeah, I do not like it, but I do like / am fine with theater of the mind for like role playing and like generic exploration. You know, I don't think you need like a map for traveling around the city and stuff. Maybe like a high level map of it of like, this is vaguely where the districts are, you know, you're like, okay, well, you know, we can do that. But things like that for like dungeons or like really big sort of set piece things, obviously you want to do. Well, go ahead.
You know there's going to be combat if the GM ever sets anything up. Because like, for example, we had one where we were visiting.
Sometimes true. we have like puzzle rooms and stuff. Yeah.
He has done a lot of handouts this campaign. He's done a lot of like books and stuff and secret codes to people and like secret stuff. I'm like, what is all this? What is all this? I don't know what any of this is. And then sometimes the players won't share. Rude.
Our GM uses, which actually this is brilliant. I'd never even thought of this. Wrapping paper, because the back of wrapping paper has 1-inch grids on it. So nice. He can just cut off however much he needs to draw it with markers real quick on a grid, and then you don't have to worry about like battle mat cleanup because it's just wrapping paper. And also if it's an important location, you can save it and not have to redraw it every time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we use that. Smart. And then we usually use like players usually have minis and enemies are usually just like tokens.
He does not skimp out on the enemies. I tell you what, didn't you see that?
Well, yeah, you said you got a 3D printer. That's a little different situation.
So he uses the warlock tiles. To just kind of like build like a tiny space, like so it's not like the whole thing or whatever. But he'll build out like the space. And then if there's like conversations that occur or if there's like a market thing, like we can do that. And you can have physical representations, but sometimes we just theater of the mind it. But I don't think we hardly ever do theater of the mind for combat because all of the boys are unga bunga and they want to see what's happening. Yeah.
So important question. It is much later for you. Yes. Are you sort of about ready to wrap up our inaugural session here and raid out? Okay, great. I was gonna say we can go a little bit longer. I do have to get on a plane tomorrow, and it's later for you.
Oh yeah, you gotta go. You're going to TwitchCon.
Yeah. But
no, you better rest up, and I gotta work tomorrow.
Oh my God, you have to work tomorrow?
I have to work tomorrow.
Bitch. Dude, you're crazy. Anyway, all right.
Wow.
Well, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Thank you especially to all of the raiders. You guys are awesome. And I hope you have enjoyed us talking about our sort of base level experiences with TTRPGs. We'll probably be back sometime next month. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but we'll
No
figure
idea.
something out.
Yeah.
We'll figure something out. And I'm going to raid DJ Fira, who is playing... what is she playing? I was just looking at it and it's just left my head. Chef RPG, which is something my wife has just started playing, which is kind of like a Stardew Valley, but you're a chef, and she's having a lot of fun with it. So I will not be here on Friday because I will be at TwitchCon. So everybody have a great week. Also, same on Monday. I'll be flying home on Monday. So we'll be
Safe
back
travels.
next week with our normally scheduled stuff other than Monday. But everybody have a lovely weekend, and thanks for hanging out.
Thank you. Have a wonderful night.
Ta-ta!